Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship. And today marks round number 1 of the 12-round calendar. And we are here at Watkins Glen International for the season opener, where we'll be focusing specifically tonight on what is the IMB Racewear lobby. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 lobbies in this series. Lobby 1 was broadcasted as of Wednesday earlier this week, and tonight we're bringing you Lobby 2 as if it were live. And Lobby 2 sponsored by IMB Racewear. We're very grateful to them, and we'll come to them very shortly. We'll be bringing you all the racing action that took place in Lobby 2 at the Watkins Glen International Circuit. Now, because I've said as if it were live earlier in this broadcast already, it is the case that you are not seeing the racing live tonight. You are seeing a post-race broadcast, so we are taking a look back at a pair of replay files effectively on the simulator known only as iRacing, the premier simulation platform on the PC, and it is the case that we bring you all that racing action as if it were live. I, as your commentator and host, do not know who wins, what happens and what not, all the trials and tribulations, the drama and shocks. I have no knowledge about it whatsoever, so this is going to be completely fresh for myself, and indeed I'll try and make it as fresh as possible for you guys and girls tuning in tonight. Now, our schedule for tonight is as follows. The times in British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1. In approximately what will be 19 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with a 20-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of the opening race of the proceedings, and that is the sprint race, which will take place at 8:20 this evening, and that'll be a 15-minute race where the only strategic element is get to the front of your selected class, and by the end of it finish ahead of your peers within class to get the maximum number of points. After that, we'll be taking a brief break before returning at approximately 4 minutes to 9, so that's approximately 56 minutes past the hour of 8, and it will be the case that we'll be getting ready for the feature race, which will kick off at 9 o'clock this evening, the feature race being the 60-minute race with that all-important mandatory pit stop, which introduces that additional strategic element. Now, in the commentary box tonight, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain of Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I will bring you all your action throughout the entirety of the season. And it is the case that with regards to this broadcast, you can tune in via one of 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. If you are a YouTube user, you can tune in via the NXTGEN Racing YouTube. Look up NXTGEN Racing on youtube.com and you'll be able to find the channel there. Alternatively, if you are so Facebook inclined, you can tune in via facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. Or last but not least, if you are a Twitch user, you can tune in via twitch.tv/TX141, my personal Twitch channel. Now, a moment ago, I did mention about classes. Well, we'll come on to that in a brief while, but the first and foremost most important thing we need to mention is our senior sponsor for this lobby, for Lobby 2, that is IMB Racewear, and the lobby will be named after them as a result. And, well, who are IMB Racewear, I hear you ask? Well, long story short, IMB Racewear delivers racewear for both sim and real-life races, which enables the racers to make the impact they always wanted to. What sets IMB Racewear apart from the competition, however, is that their racewear prides itself on individuality as it is designed for you, by you. This means that each product is fully customizable, unlike your typical off-the-shelf racewear products. Whether you're looking for racing gloves, racing shoes, or team clothing, there are no limits to levels of customization available, and if you want to know more and get your hands on your own bespoke racewear today, be sure to head to their official website. That's imbраcewear.com. That website, once again, imbраcewear.com. Now, of course, we're very grateful to have IMB Racewear sponsoring Lobby 2, and in terms of their sponsorship in working with us, it means that they are supporting us in the provision of prizes for Lobby 2, particularly for the GT3 class drivers, where there'll be a set of custom gloves up for grabs for our GT3 class winners in both the Pro and AM categories, and that will add to the cash prize pool, which is to be confirmed, which will be available to GT3 class drivers. And as for our LMP AM class drivers, there will be a cash prize pool available for them, and the exact prize and size of that pool is yet to be determined. It's still being worked out. But you can imagine there are multiple prizes up for grabs, and IMB Racewear supporting us in that prize pool with the prizes available, that custom set of gloves for our GT3 class winners. Now, with that in mind, of course, that means that we should naturally come on to our drivers and the classes and explain what the class system will be in this series. Well, as you can see here, it is the case that we have 3 classes that will be taking part in Lobby 2, much like in Lobby 1 that we brought you earlier in the week. It is the case that we firstly have an LMP2 class, and whilst they're just listed as LMP2 here, you can imagine these drivers are the LMP2 AMs. We had an LMP2 Pro class in Lobby 1, or the Apex Racing Academy lobby, earlier in the week. Well, this is the LMP2 AM class, and there is the distinction, is the fact they weren't able to quite qualify for the Pro category that featured in Lobby 1, but we still wanted to bring them within Lobby 2, and it is the case that we have our LMP2 AM drivers here. And they will be racing around in the Dallara P217 LMP2 or Le Mans prototype machine, and it is the case that we can see there's some regular names in NXTGEN Racing Series, such as Jack Wireborn returning returning. Mark Baker as well. Mark Baker trading out what was previously the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo and moving to what is now going to be the LMP2 machine. We've also got Paul Scott there from Next Gen Racing. Paul Williams back once again from Team Tetra Rouge Racing, and he'll be taking part in a rather, I think it's going to be some rather Bentley-inspired colours on his LMP2 machine from what I'm hearing the rumour down the paddock. And we also have Stefan Wessels, very interestingly enough, taken to the LMP2 machinery. And you'll remember that he made his debut last time out in the Season 2 of the GT3 series on iRacing, and it was the case that Stefan Wessels was absolutely dominant in the AM class, really just the best of the field by a significant margin, and it is going to be the case that we've seen him in an LMP2 machine as of tonight. But as well as returning faces, we have some new names to talk about, such as Barry Meacham, for example, who we've heard a lot about down the paddock, looking very fast as Barry Meacham and looking to take the fight to a good number of drives. We've also got Michael Price and Jonathan Collins, to name two others. Richard Stanton as well. You name it, we've got newcomers as well as veterans of series, and they're going to be mixing it up within the LMP2 class. However, it's not just about LMP2 machines. We've also got two GT3 categories here. We have the pros and we have the AMs, separated by the pre-season testing based on their average lap times in both qualifying and the races and their performance in the pre-season races. And we can see a variety of drives. Again, in the pro category, we've got some returning names, such as Dirt Bounce, Gus Franken, Jeremy DeBova. Who could forget Jeremy DeBova with his rather strong performances and brilliant defensive driving? We also have Matthew Prout in there. Peter Lemkins coming back once again. And Peter Lemkins, of course, whilst not having the best of the results last time out in Season 2 of the GT3 Championship, still a contender in the midfield and a much-loved driver at that. We have the return of Sean Scudder, promoted to the Pro class from the AM class. Again, a fellow member of Racing Team Astra alongside Stefan Wessels, but he's decided, has Scudder, to stay within the Pro GT3 class, or stay within the GT3s, and has been promoted to the Pros due to his pace in the pre-season testing. But it's not just about the returnees, it's also about the newcomers as well, such as Andrew Cardinal IV. We can also see there coming in is Dima Canini, and we've also got there Julian Lardier, just to name three of our newcomers within the Pro class, and they'll be mixing it up and looking to assert their prowess. It's the same picture in the GT3 AM class, where we have a number of newcomers and we have a number of returnees. Returnees including, of course, the younger member of the DeBova family, where Jeremy being the father, Navarro being the youngster, the son of the family, and we're looking forward to seeing him taken to the circuit once again, especially with his results continuing to improve, and I do believe he was given the Most Improved Driver award of Season 2 of the dedicated GT3 Championship. Such was his improvement over the course of the season. Mark Harris-Smith as well, some of you remember his name. He's joined us as of this season. You remember him from the MX5 Cup run by Next Gen Racing on iRacing. Well, he is joining us for the GT3s here in the Proto GT3 Championship. We have the return of Liam Tack as well, a fan favourite, not necessarily up there in terms of results, but who could forget Liam Tack with some absolutely brilliant moments, and some moments which he may not be wanting to be remembered for, but still, we absolutely love him. Gareth Mills as well, and we can also see there the introduction of a couple of other drivers, including Tristan Di Nobrega, who's joined in from Racing Team Astra, to name one other, as well as Lorenzo Gualtieri. But we've got plenty more drivers to introduce, and we will, over the course of the series, try to get some camera time for them and make sure they get their time of day in the spotlight. But coming from our drivers then, it's only fair we go from our three classes, all competing, of course, within class, to the circuit we are at tonight. And that is Watkins Glen International Boot Course. We're at the full circuit, and we're in the state of New York in the United States of America here. And it's the case that this circuit, as you can see on the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, is one of 3 circuits that this series features in the United States of America over the course of the 12 rounds. And my goodness, is it a fast-paced circuit. Starting off with the 90 right at turn number 1, the fast flying up through turns 2 through to 4, known as the S's, and then coming up to the bus stop chicane at turn number 5, before rolling onto the outer loop at turn 6 and down into the boot from turn 7 through to 10. It is the case the boot, of course, being a much lower average pace section of the circuit compared to the rest of the corners, but by no means not a place to go for overtaking. Alternatively, a place where we can see some fantastic action before wrapping up at turns 11 and 12, where the pace ramps up as our driver comes to the end of their current lap and goes on to the next one. As for the rules for this series, and these will be the general rules that apply over the course of each and every round, and we'll be reminding you as we go, it is the case that our drivers shall be running the iRace Sprint setup for tonight's races. Regardless of which car they are in, they're running the sprint setup. It's a fixed setup series. They are not allowed to tweak the setup over the course of tonight's proceedings. In terms of the sprint race, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. You'll notice no mention there of a free fast repair. It is the case that if our drivers pick up damage, they've either got to soldier on to the very end, alternatively, they need to come into the pits, sacrifice the time to repair the damage. So they won't want to pick up damage in the sprint. Well, taking a pit stop in the sprint is going to be very detrimental to your race health. In the feature race, meanwhile, we can see that the grid has now been updated in terms of how it will be set, and it shall be set as a reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You guys and girls asked for it, our drivers asked for it, and it is the case that we are going back to a full reverse grid with the one condition that the grid shall be separated into car classes starting approximately 5 seconds apart. Now, to clarify, what does that mean with the grid starting in terms of car classes and being reverse grid? What it will mean is that the LMP2 drivers or the LMP2 car class will start at the front, and they will be reversed based on the results of their class within the sprint race. So the winner in the LMP2 class will start at the back of their class, whereas the last place driver will start at the front. There will then be a 5-second gap to all of the GT3 machines, and I should clarify, we are not splitting the pros and the AMs of the GT3s for the grid of the feature race. Wherever they finish relative to each other, we will be seeing the reverse grid based on the pros and AMs combined. So it is the case, if a pro was to finish dead last in terms of in the sprint race compared to the AMs and pros, they'll be starting right at the front. Whereas, let's say, for example, an AM, were they to repeat history, much like Stefan Wessels was able to in Lobby 2, or what was the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing Lobby of the Season 2 of the GT3 Championship last time out, if the AM driver was to beat all the pros, they would be starting at the back for the purposes of the feature race from the GT3 class. And that means we have our two classes separated, but there'll be plenty of frantic action. On top of that, there should be one mandatory pit stop, which will require drivers to take on fuel, changing tyres being entirely optional. If our drivers change tyres, that is, of course, at their own decision. It may give them pace, but it'll cost them extra time in the pits. Each driver will have one fast repair available, and the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 or more instant points, if they've been a little bit naughty. But as you can see there's no mention of qualifying here. It is the case that all our drivers, regardless of what car they're in, they will be out on circuit together for the purposes of the qualifying session, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go into the qualifying session in terms of what that means in the trials, tribulations, risks, and rewards of the qualifying session. But that's enough about rules and regulations. I know why you're all here, ladies and gentlemen. So am I. It is the case. We're all here for the racing, and let's head to the trackside then and see what's happening right now, as we still have the final practice session here before we go racing. And we can see it is the case that right now Stefan Wessels, as we look to the cameras here, for Racing Team Astra Blue, Racing Team Astra bringing two teams to this series. It is the case bringing Racing Team Astra Blue and Racing Team Astra Orange, and there is a teams championship up for grabs here, as well as drivers championship within each respective class. And it's the case that really this man from South Africa, the big name that came on the scene in the GT3 Championship Season 2, was absolutely dominant performances in the AM class, and he's upgraded himself to the LMP2 Dallara P217 machinery, and we'll be looking forward to seeing how he gets on a much faster machine. But when we heard about the fact that he was looking to go into one of the LMPs, he was looking to get a lot of practice, and he's been putting in the time and effort in the build-up to this series, and I get the feeling he's feeling quite confident right now. I get the feeling that he's feeling quite hooked up, and we'll have to wait and see how that goes tonight as he makes his way on around. But as we look from in the fastest in the LMP class in this session, albeit those times are not 100% accurate. I think there might be some glitches on our timing board, but we'll get those resolved as soon as possible. It is the case we look a little bit further afield here, and we can see just in front of him, in fact, Peter Lemkins here, we were talking about a little bit earlier on, the RP Motorsport Pro AM driver here, racing for the GT3 Pro class this time, and bringing the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo to the circuit. And well, it works for him quite nicely last time out in the GT3 Championship, and he's bringing back his old faithful once again here. And Lemkins, of course, the Belgian driver, a much loved driver, a very fair but honest driver at the same time. And as he makes his way down and around, heading through what is turn number 8 and heading up towards 9 right now, we look forward to seeing how he gets on over the course of the season. Meanwhile, in the AMs, as we look around, we can see Mark Sykes here in the Audi R8, and it is the case the Next Gen Racing with Sam Case's UK driver back in one of his favourite liveries, of course. So indeed, Mark Sykes, a major livery designer. He's put together a lot of the liveries, not just for himself, but for a number of drivers in this championship, and that is Mark Sykes Designs. If you're interested in having a custom livery made for you on iRacing or a selected car, Mark Sykes, the Englishman, absolutely fantastic livery designer, and he hasn't paid me to say that. I'm saying that true to my heart. It is the case he can cook up some absolutely superb designs, and indeed someone to check out. But of course, he's going from the designing board to the circuit in the Audi R8, and I did have the chance to catch up with him in the build-up to tonight's race, and we'll talk more about what he had to say in qualifying as we do look a little bit further around. We also have Andrew Withers joining us tonight in the GT3 AM class here, the privateer, making his way around in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo as well. And Andrew Withers, I think, joined us for just 1 or 2 rounds. He makes his way through a turn number 10 there. He wasn't quite on my driver's sheet, but it may be the case he's a late sign-up. We'll wait for clarification on that at a later date. As he makes his way through turn number 11 into 12 right now, we look forward to seeing how he gets on. but we can see a number of you there in the chats, and we should say to you, whether you're tuned in via Facebook, YouTube or Twitch, if you do want to say anything in the chat, whether it's to myself, alternatively to communicate with some of the other people tuning in, or if you don't want to be shy and just want to say hello and ask how we're doing, and indeed I hope you're all doing well, guys and girls who are tuning in, feel free to put something in the chat and we'll be able to see it and read it out for you. As we say hello there to No Mercy NL in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, No Mercy. Hope you're doing well. And I do believe that is Mr. Lambert Weather there in the YouTube chat as a result. And I hope you're doing well, sir, as we do believe you'll be taken to the circuit as of tonight. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, that's why we've got a post-race broadcast, and you'll be seeing some of the drivers who took part watching this back. So they'd like to see how they get on and see how others get on as well. We also say hello to Arjan Craig on the YouTube chat there. Good evening to you, Arjan. We've also got Navarro over there. Good evening to you, Mr. Debova. And we can also see in the Facebook chat Matt Emmons there saying hopefully nobody took their team out like him, and well, it is the case. Well, for those of you who did not tune in on Wednesday in the GT3 AM class, there was this hugely dramatic moment whereby the two teammates of Matt Emmons and Matthew Addy came together at this corner just coming up turn number 11, which James States I think is just going to literally list to and come to a halt approximately about 100 metres before the corner, which is a shame. We'd love to see the corner, but it was the case. The two drivers came together through that corner in the race and scuppered their chances of a respective race win, and in the end it was to Stefan Gamble Rasmussen to pick up 2 wins out of 2, and I think the smile on his face was an absolutely huge one. He did talk about being lucky, Gamble Rasmussen, but at the same time you've got to be fast to be right up there, and indeed he was. But now we focus on Lobby 2 of course, and well, we do wait to see how things go over the course of tonight. Do we have any potential favourites from what we're gathering? Not really at this point in time. I mean, we could argue based on what his pre-season pace and previous form that we've seen from some drivers that Jeremy Debova, for example, in the challenge by DB1 Mercedes here, is looking to be one of the strong drivers within the GT3 Pro class. And to be fair to both, we talked about being a very strong defensive driver, having switched from the Audi R8, and indeed McChange have moved away from the Audi R8 platform and have gone to a variety of cars. It looks like the DB1 team, or the McChange by DB1 team, are bringing the Mercedes AMG, and it'll be interesting to see how Debova gets on in the German machinery here. Very fast car on the straight, not quite there in the corners necessarily, but at the same time it's got some very good systems on it in terms of anti-lock braking system and also traction control, so it may be a good call to switch that after the Audi R8 was a bit of a difficult car for a challenge, but they made it work in their respective teams, and we'll wait to see. And well, as we see him making his way around right now, we do also see, I believe, DDD Blaming parked in the pits in the sister car in the McChange by DB1, also the Mercedes there, and well, McChange by DB2 however opting to go to the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, so they haven't all gone to the one particular make of car this time. They've decided to split the cars, and changed by DB2 with Navarro Debova at the head of the helm running around in that Ferrari, as we see the Belgian driver making his way around, and it could be a major challenge there, and it looks like trying to get some side temperature in those tyres, and perhaps got a little bit of damage on the car. That front left axle actually not looking too composed there. Well, that's just my eyesight, I think, less than him damaging the car as he decides to park it up. Of course, he's got Kurt Van Hoenacker, and in fact Kurt Van Hoenacker also decided to go for the Mercedes, so they've decided then to split the cars, and it is the case. They're changed by DB2. It's the young Navarro Debova who's going for the Ferrari, and then Van Hoenacker, who was his teammate of course in season 2 of the GT3 Championship, going for the Mercedes. A good, interesting split, and I do wonder whether they're doing that for information for later on in the season. Although I'm not 100% sure whether the GT3 drivers are allowed to make a single car swap this season, or as we see there, Van Hoenacker getting it very wrong and putting it into the tyre barrier and ending up on his roof. He won't want to be doing that in qualifying, but thankfully it's a practice session, and as a result he can just reset back to the garage and then do some repair work on the car. But meanwhile, as we see Baz Meacham here making his way out around for Team BRM, the Welshman making his way out of turn number 8 and up towards 9. And well, for gathering here, Meacham of course new on the scene in NXTGEN Racing, or at least in the GT3 series, and running around in the LMP here, looking quite good in terms of his final practice times here, albeit coming up against a little bit of traffic as he makes his way through. Mark Sykes just in front of him here, and it should be clarified by the way for those of you guys and girls wondering what happens in the scenario when an LMP comes up behind a GT3. Is it the case that GT3 has to scramble out of the way? Well, given the fact the LMP is the much faster car by almost 10 seconds over a course of a lap here at Watkins Glen, it's quite the opposite. The LMP driver needs to find a way to safely pass the GT3. Of course, the GT3 needs to be aware of the LMP being there. They can't suddenly change their racing line at the last moment and cause a near miss or an accident. But it is the case that the LMP2 class cars are expected to find their way past. There is no obligation for the GT3s just to move out the way, because at the end of the day, everybody is racing, and as a result, it is one of those situations whereby everyone needs to apply a little bit of common sense. nonsense. We saw that in Lobby 1, to be fair, in the majority of cases, although it led to a very interesting situation in the sprint race. For those of you who did not tune in, I strongly recommend you go back and check out the sprint race from what was Lobby 1 earlier this week, where we saw the battle for the GT3 Pro class lead on the final lap literally end up bunching up the battle for the LMP2 Pro class lead, and it was the case. It was a huge surprise right here, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but definitely go check that out because it was a major surprise, and I think everybody loved it. Well, the drivers involved, some of them would have loved it, some of them would not have loved it, but it led to some fantastic action on the final lap, and that's what we love to have, an action all the way through. In fact, as we see Lambert Wedder here making his way down, the team racing Netherlands Lamborghini Huracan, and that is the end of the practice session, and onwards to qualifying we go. So we're only a brief moment away before we'll be going qualifying. It'll be 20 minutes to qualifying. All 31 drivers out on circuit. In fact, I think it's yes, it is 31 drivers out on circuit. If you see Robert Dasunik on the timing sheet there, that is a glitch in the system because Robert Dasunik joined this lobby by accident at the start of the racing evening, and then quickly jump back to lobby 1 where he was meant to be in the Apex Racing Academy lobby. But it is the case, we've got 31 drivers taken to the tarmac tonight, and well, now we go into qualifying here with 20 minutes. Now the big question, of course, in this qualifying session is what can we expect on the opening qualifying session? Well, this circuit, a very fast-paced circuit, a very high-speed orientated circuit here, where it's all about getting on the power as soon as possible and charging up towards the next corner. And particularly coming out of 90 right, all the way up to turn number 5, up towards the bus stop, it is the case you've got one long run where you're completely flat out, and by mastering the art of getting on the throttle as soon as possible, you'll get the best possible lap time. But what that also means, in terms of car choice, we're expecting the GT3s that are more optimised for acceleration and straight line top speed to work out best, and the Mercedes is going to be very strong, we reckon, around here. But also we are expecting what is the Ferrari not to be too bad around here. It's got a reasonable top speed, but meanwhile the Audis, for example, may just struggle a little bit by comparison, but we will have to wait and find out. We also do have a unicorn in the form of a McLaren being piloted by Elwin Sykes, and he'll be bringing the McLaren MP4 12C out on circuit in short order, and we'll have to wait and see how he gets on in that car. The car that nobody really picks, as we heard last time out in Lobby 1. Have to wait and see as we see Sam Holman here making his way out to the final pair of corners coming up, and when he does, he will be going on to the first flying lap of Lobby 2's championship campaign, and we'll ride on board with Sam Holman as he takes us around then for the opening lap of the season in qualifying as he makes his way out of that final corner. So charging up to a line here in the LMP2 Dallara P217 and making his way down towards turn number 1 here, sighting his braking marker, looking to brake at around 50 metres, turning a little bit wide of apex there, understeering on camber as he now accelerates out the corner and goes charging up the hill. Flat out through here as he makes his way through the S's, turn 2 complete, into left-hander turn number 3, just gentle steering inputs here, doesn't want to be too aggressive, wants to keep the speed as he makes his way through 4, and in the long run up towards the bus stop chicane now as he heads up towards turn 5. Looking into the right hander very shortly, looking for his braking marker there, braking about 150 metres, a dab of the brake, flicking the car through from 6 down to 4, and accelerating from 3rd all the way out to 4th gear, before tucking it into turn number 6 here, going through the outer loop, and going a little bit wide of apex once again there, but keeping it nicely tucked in as he makes his way down into turn number 7. Now gently making his way down here, a little bit too close to the apex there, actually taking a bit of grass with him as he makes his way down towards turn 8, and as he comes down into the braking zone here for turn 8, rolling the car uphill, going uphill, so as a result he can be a little bit more aggressive on that throttle rather than having to worry about being a downhill camber. It's an uphill camber corner, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 9 right now, continuing to make his way uphill, and there's into a downhill dip here under braking into 9, the car just sweeping through, very nicely tucked in. We're heading uphill into turn number 10 here, rejoining where the boot would not appear if we were running without the boot, and as he makes his way out to 10 and up towards turn 11, only 2 corners to go here, 3rd gear up into 4th gear, a quick dab of the brakes and staying in 4th as he makes his way through 11, now coming into turn number 12, final corner, staying in 4th once again as he flicks through. He's got to be careful, that wall, just missing the wall by inches there as he makes his way across that line. And what's it going to be for the first flying lap? Well, it's a 33.138, but I suspect that there might be some faster laps on the board here as we are waiting to see what else comes across that line. And well, Mark Baker not as fast as 34.1 as he comes on through. We've got a couple of drivers already completing their laps in the GT3 classes, and we see Didi Laming there coming across the line, then Lucas Romano doing the same. Romano going to the BMW M4 for this season for RP Motorsports as he makes his way on around. Plenty more laps to come, however, and Stefan Vessels now raises the bar in terms of the fastest lap of the session, the fastest lap of the LMPs to a 131.9 as he loses the rear end a bit there, just getting on the power a little bit too soon and having to navigate the fact that a GT3 on his outside, and that compromised his line, and he's jumped to the pits there. It won't take him too long to get back out by the looks of things, but yeah, that did not go the way he wanted to. Peter Lemkins has come into the pits. He's the fastest of all of our GT3s at the moment, is Lemkins. Well, We've still got quite a few GT3s out there, including Gus Franken right now, who has put in the time, and we'll wait to see what he's able to achieve. As meanwhile, we see Elwin Sykes here in the very fancy liveried RTA orange McLaren here as he makes his way down. We can see Gualtieri there taking what is provisional pole in the GT3 AM class and almost snatching away provisional pole in the overall GT3s in overall P8 there, and we can see on the board. But we're focusing right now on Elwin Sykes. He makes his way around on his first flying lap here and coming sweeping on through in the British machinery here as the South African driver as he rolls on down the hill and looking very smooth right now as he comes down. The flames absolutely flickering out the rear of the two exhausts. They're absolutely wonderful to see as he comes down the hill. Price, meanwhile, Michael Price takes provisional pole at 31.755 for the LMP class. That's the overall pole as well, as we continue to see Sykes making his way through 9 up into 10 here. But I think what Sykes has done very well, to be fair, Elwin Sykes, is he's found himself a nice bit of space on the circuit where he's not going to bump into an LMP2 machine or have an LMP2 machine come up behind him too rapidly here. They are coming up that straight that he's just left, coming through turn number 10 up towards, turn number 8 up towards 9, and now making his way out towards turn number 10. You can see at the rear of the picture there, you've got what is Baz Meacham coming up behind, and also, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that's Collins, but they're not going to catch him until really gets into the start-finish straight here, and that's what you need to do in these mixed qualifying sessions. And these qualifying sessions, we have everybody out on the circuit, and the challenge is you have to find the space in order to be able to set your qualifying lap. As a GT3 driver, you want to avoid having an LMP2 close behind. You really want approximately a 10 to 12 second gap, as Sykes puts in a 44.389, which puts in P20 overall. That's P5 in the AM class. A good opening lap there from Sykes, and as a result, he's been given an entire lap to himself. And then, as you can see there, it was the case that Meacham just coming through, and we'll have Collins coming through very shortly. But to be fair, if Collins catches Sykes here on the run up through the S's and down towards bus stop, he's going to catch him at the right opportune moment, and Sykes actually pulls over, so he's not on a fast lap now, and that actually means to the LMP drivers that they do not have to worry about being too heavily compromised. Well, I say that, and Collins immediately lifts off as they make the way on through. And well, as we look a little bit further down, Lorenzo Gualtieri right now, I mean, if you wanted a name that is going to seize headlines, here it is. As we see the Racing Team Astra orange driver in the AM category here, making his way on around. Now, it should be pointed out, if you're wondering, are we going to see a situation whereby we could, in the opening round, have an AM driver in the GT3 class run away with proceedings, and that translates into them running away through the entirety of the season? Well, we do have the opening couple of rounds, as I'm to understand it, or I've been informed, whereby the classifications may be adjusted to a degree. So if we find there's one or two drivers, Gualtieri gets it very wrong over the bus stop chicane, over the entry curbs there, and sends it into the tyre barrier and jumps to the pits. But if we do have a driver who seems to be outperforming everybody within their class, then the organisers will be taking a look at whether they can be reclassified. As we see it there, Nobrega getting it wrong coming through the bus stop chicane and losing the rear of the car. And we saw a load of drivers having that similar situation over the course of Lobby 1, where those apex curbs, where's the bus stop chicane, just very detrimental to a car's health. Particularly the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, if they take too much curb, it just unsettles the mass at the rear of the car. Of course, the centre of the mass more towards the rear, with the engine being located towards the rear, say the Ferrari and also the Audi R8 and the McLaren MP412C. And as a result, the rear just comes loose, and then the driver has to fight to try and keep it pointing in a straight line. But we can see that's the case that Dino Brega takes it to the pits. As meanwhile, while the front engine rear-wheel drive GT3s in the hands of Lucas Romano, making its way around here, and I think trying to build up to a lap. Now, as he makes his way on around here, the BMW AM4 driver, we're going to very briefly be right on board to give you a GT3 perspective. What it's like to drive a GT3 around here. And in fact, we jump on board with the Pro category driver as he makes his way on through and heads around for a flying lap. So in the BMW M4 here, it's going to be a bit of a slower lap by comparison with the Dallara LMP2, but by no means less thrilling, as in fact we get a slight connectivity issue there. And as he breaks down into turn 1, braking at that 100 metre board, flying on through there, using a little bit of the runoff air, which he's allowed to do. It's within track limits, and as he makes his way up through the S's now, full throttle up here as he uses the German machinery, charging up the hill, roaring all the way through here, and it can feel like a lifetime in some situations. He's got a lot of space on the circuit. He's got nobody near him, ahead or behind, so this is going to work out very well for Romano. Now he comes on towards the bus stop chicane here. The fastest entry point as he brakes at that 200 metre board, dabs the brake, cuts over the apex curves there, very nice. You can see how much apex curve he can take because the centre of mass is towards the front in the BMW, with that engine being located ahead of the driver rather than behind. He can be more aggressive with his curve usage, and as he makes his way out of the outer loop, down into turn number 7 he comes here, flying nicely down as he just brings the car through the corner, and as he accelerates out, making his way down towards turn number 8. Now going into the uphill right hand here, braking at around 75 metres, and he cuts on through very smooth on apex before accelerating out here. Just gently getting back on that throttle, using the full width of the circuit to his advantage. before making his way down towards turn number 9. Going uphill and now into the slight downhill braking zone here as he brakes at about 125 metres there, and as he flows on through the right hand, very nicely tucked in, we're heading up the hill. Only 3 more corners to go here. It's looking a very smooth lap as he just gets a little bit of entry understeer there, but he brings the car back together, and in fact actually ends up with a little bit of snap oversteer in return as he turns through the corner, trying to get back on the power eagerly, and as he makes his way through 11, a bit of a lift off before coming into 12. It was looking a very good lap, to be fair, but it's all gone a bit wrong as we see Lambert Weather pulling out the way to go into the pits, and in the end, well, how will Lucas Romano do as he comes across that line? I don't think it's going to be an improvement. No, it's not an improvement at all, and in fact it's gone horribly wrong as a result of that 1 or 2 mistake, and then it is the case he's going to have to do another lap to try and get further up the order. As we say hello to Stefan Vessels in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Mr. Vessels. I hope you're doing well. Meanwhile, looking further around, it is the case that we have DB Blaming here making his way up towards what is the bus stop chicane. Mercedes, then changed by DB Mercedes on 1, and as he makes his way down towards the bus stop here, it is the case currently P4 within class P13 overall in the GT3 Pro class, that is, in terms of where he's in class, as he makes his way through the outer loop here. Half the qualifying session complete, another half still to go. Looking good right now is Blaming, although I think for him what he's got to think about is how can he get a 10th on Dirk Bounce. It is the case that right now Peter Lemkins has broken away quite a bit from his peers, but then Romano, Bounce and Blaming all separated by only what is 0.2 of a second in that battle to be the best of the rest in the GT3 Pro class in this qualifying session. And well, in fact, talking about timings and how everybody compares, let's just bring up the data on your screen for you, ladies and gentlemen, to give you an idea. Here's how the times sit with regards to the splits between the LMP AM, the GT3 Pro and the GT3 AM drivers here. As we can see, it is the case that Price right now the fastest of everybody overall. He would be by default if he's in an LMP, but he is the fastest of his class as well by 1.5 tenths over Stefan Vessels, with a further 1.5 tenths to Paul Williams behind, and then Sam Holman and Paul Scott complete that top 5 in the LMP category qualification provisional. But meanwhile, in the GT3 Pro, we can see Peter Lemkins is still on that pole position by 0.3 of a second ahead of Matthew Prouting. In fact, Prouting's found a way to get up there. As we see, it is the case that DDD Blaming does not improve, but Prouting, as we hop to him here, running the BMW M4 once again this season, but it's the case in an all-new livery, and well, Prouting is on a mission here. He's only 200ths faster than Lucas Romano, but at the end of the day, whether it's 1,000 for a whole second, it's being ahead that matters, and right now, Prouting will be very aware of that as he gets a very nice run through the bus stop chicane, gets it smooth over the apexes here as the Eclipse Racing machine makes its way down through the outer loop and comes charging up towards turn number 7 in short order. Now, as he makes his way up through, one of the things that we observed from Prouting in the previous season was the fact there seemed to be a lot of pace behind Prouting. He just needed the time of day to deploy it, and when it did go his way, there were some good results on the board. But when things didn't go his way, he wasn't quite there compared to where he wanted to be, and I think Prouting really trying to kick the season off with a bang as Ryan makes his way on through, and you can see still that gap from Lucas Romano to DDD Blaming, P3 to P5 in the GT3 Pro class, only 0.2 of a second. That's how close it is between those guys, with a further 1.5 tenths back to Sean Scooter in P6. But meanwhile, in the GT3 AM class, well, Lorenzo Gualtieri here in a world of his own in this qualification session by a significant margin by 2.5 tenths over Tristan Di Nobrega as they make their way on around. And the Racing Team Astra Orange driver here looking very good in Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. And well, to be fair, I say that he's looking very good. We shouldn't count out the fact that Di Nobrega is doing very well himself here in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, and he has got a 0.3 of a second advantage over Mark Sykes as we see Nobrega making his way down and through turn number 7 up towards 8. Now, of course, these two are new to the scene in NXTGEN Racing from Racing Team Astra, and it is the case that Di Nobrega racing in the Racing Team Astra blue livery colours. He's part of the second team of the two, or one of the two teams, I should say. I'm not sure which one's the primary and which one's the secondary team, or whether they're just completely equal teams. You never know, but it is the case that we can see here Di Nobrega enjoying this qualifying session very much as we look to Mark Sykes, meanwhile, who's in P3 in the GT3 AM class. And I had the chance to catch up with Mark Sykes, as I was saying earlier, in the build-up to tonight's proceedings, and he had quite a few things to say with regards to expectations and whatnot. And long story short, what he was saying is going to the Audi R8, looking to take on board a new car. He has Stefan Vessels coming up behind him here, and that's going to be a compromise lap for Stefan Vessels. Oh, goodness me, as Sykes just loses the rear end there. locks the brakes up to keep the car from sliding back onto the circuit and brings it back into the pits immediately. But he switched from the Ferrari 488 to the Audi R8 GT3, and in the pre-season he's had a lot of coaching from one of his colleagues, Jamie Dorey, who enjoyed the Audi R8 of course in the GT3 season 2, and it is the case that Mark Sykes has really felt as though his confidence has improved as a result of that coaching in both his racing and also the car itself. He's put a lot of practice in ahead of Watkins Glen and feeling confident going into this round. Well, indeed, for those of you who have got your anoraks out right now, you will remember that Mark Sykes did of course take the win in the opening sprint race in the GT3 season 2 in the Ferrari, and he's just currently being serviced there in the pit lane right now. And indeed, we wish him and all of our drivers the best of luck going into tonight. Didn't have the chance to catch up with too many of our drivers, to be fair. A lot of them were quite tight-lipped, of course, not wanting to give too much away in the build-up to the season opener. We can see Arjan Kregel making his way through turn number 10 there, making his way up towards 11, and the Dutchman, a very friendly chap indeed. If you get the chance to message him, whether it be on Discord or in real life, I can tell you, lovely gentleman as he makes his way through 11 and 12. A race, of course, for Team Racing Netherlands here as he makes his way out of the final corner. And Gregor looking forward to the proceedings. That was the short gist of what he had to say to me. Was this looking forward to going racing, and well, we look forward to seeing how he gets on. Currently P4 in class and 3/10 of a second, exactly the same gap to Mark Sykes as Mark Sykes is to Tristan de Nobrega. That's quite an interesting one, not a coincidence, but it is the case, that gap equal between the two of them. And we see at P5 in the GT3 AMs is Navarro de Bova right now, as he makes his way through the right-hander there of turn number 12. Now, with 5 minutes of this qualifying session to go, we can see that Michael Price is still on provisional pole for the LMP AMs at this point in time, and looking very good as Price at this moment, looking very strong as he makes his way on around. And well, Price right at the top end and really pushing on hard right now. Meanwhile, at the bottom end of the table, but by no means should be forgotten about, is Chris Keenan, who you can't quite see there, but he is parked up in the pit lane, and he's parked up in the Audi R8, the Belgian driver, and I think he will be thinking about how he can improve on his time. He is currently 3 attempts off the back of Liam Tack by comparison. But as he's waiting to go right now, we do look back out towards our LMP drivers, and we look to Paul Williams here, who I said earlier might be running a Bentley-inspired livery, and indeed that is some very venerable Bentley colours being run there. For those of you who are Fanatec GT World Challenge not sponsors, my apologies, fans, you may recall that livery as was featured on the Bentleys in that series, at least 1 or 2 of them, I believe, on the Bentley Continental GT3 2018 machines, and I also believe that was the livery that Bentley ran when they won the Bathurst Le Mans race, the Bathurst endurance race. I can't remember the duration of it, but quite a notable win for Bentley, and it was in those colours, and that's what the colours that Paul Williams is running as he makes his way on down in towards turn number 8 here as he comes flying on through. And to be fair, Paul Williams, he was not quite there last season in terms of being up there to challenge for wins in the GT3 Pro category in what was season 2 in Lobby 2, but it is the case he's ditched the Ferrari 488 and gone to the Dallara P217, and well, right now looking quite good in the LMP AM category here, with the fact he's 2.5 tenths off of Stefan Vessels, and he is just shy of 1/10 ahead of Paul Scott right now, looking good. And to be fair, Paul Williams, one of those drivers who's constantly learning, and he'll learn from that one as he grazes the wall coming out to turn 10, just getting on the power a little bit too soon there, not letting the rear of the car settle, and as a result the rear of the car kicking up and saying, well, if you're not going to let me settle, I'm not going to let you settle in the cockpit, as he peels on in to do some repair work to the car. Paul Scott meanwhile making his way on around. We can see here the Briton making his way into turn at number 8 as he flows on through here. And Paul Scott really was one of those drivers who worked with his Next Gen Racing counterparts, and indeed he from Next Gen Racing himself, working with Gareth Williams last season and Jamie Dorey as well. And Paul Scott really the third name in that pack, and he'll be looking to try and assert himself out there as he pulls out of the way here. And I think he's decided to come in to the pits, or jump to the pits, as we do say hello there to Werner Pretorius in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Werner, and he's cheering on Stefan Vessels, we can see there. But meanwhile, looking back up towards the front of the field, and particularly looking at what is our GT3 pros here, we can see it is the case of Peter Lemkins, still half a second clear of his peers. Now that is quite a sensational lap of 42.108. That is 2 tenths ahead of Galtieri, who is our GT3 and provisional pole sitter right now. But it is the case of Peter Lemkins. There's something special about this circuit to Peter Lemkins, I reckon. I think he could be looking very good here today as he makes his way around with less than 2 minutes of this qualifying session to go now. It is the case of looking good as Lemkins, and will he be able to hold on to this, or will we suddenly get a last minute surprise That will be the big question as we see him making his way on around that, as he does. And meanwhile, a little bit further on around the circuit, we can see, or a little bit further down the order, I should say, Dirt Bounce here, making his way into turn 1 in what is the Mercedes here, as we ride on board with Dirt Bounce. He takes us around for one more flying lap, and this will be his last flying lap of the session as he makes his way up the hill through the S's and up towards the bus stop chicane. And well, we can hear that roar of the Mercedes V8 engine as he makes his way on through. Of course, an absolutely beastly engine as he makes his way down towards turn at number 5. And there is a reason, of course, why Mercedes have done so well in the GT3 class in the past. Here's the case. They make some very strong machinery here as he absolutely hammers the bus stop chicane. Perfection there defined as he flows on through. And Stefan Vessels has taken the overall pole from what I'm hearing on the 131.1. And now it is Price who's half a second off of Vessels as things are still ongoing. We ride on board here with Bounce. He takes us down towards turn number 8 as he makes his way into the corner. He hasn't got any concerns with regards to traffic or that catching up to him. It is the case he has got the circuit to himself ahead as he just runs a little bit wide and gets hooked on the grass there on exit. When we look to the exterior cameras now as he makes his way down the back straight here. And as he makes his way down that back straight and heads, oh goodness me, he's gone very, very wide there, missed his braking point, and I think that will be an invalidated lap for Bounce. Alternatively, it'll be a compromised lap. He will not be able to finish that one. I think it's all gone horribly wrong. But meanwhile, Vessels is in the pits here as we get the checkered flag out. Now, can Price respond here, given the fact that Vessels has put in a phenomenal lap? And I do not think Price is going to respond. He's actually going quite slowly as Price. He's pulling up. I think he's decided enough's enough. So that will be, unless Paul Scott can find something magical on this final flying lap, I think it's going to be Stefan Vessels who takes pole position in the LMP2 AM category by half a second over Price in the end. Well, that is going to be a sensational margin if so. But to be fair, what happens in qualifying is only one part of the story. You've got to also do it in the race. You may start on pole, but it may be the case that we find that by the end of the first couple of corners, that will changes. You never know. As we can see here, Paul Scott flying on through. Well, a little bit of smoke being kicked up there. A bit of brake dust, I think, from earlier at turn number 8. I don't think that's going to annoy Paul Scott in the slightest. As our drivers continue to make their way on around right now, we see Jack Wyborn here coming across that timeline. He improves to P7 and within the class, in the LMP class, just getting ahead of Mark Baker on a 32.520. And the only other driver in this class waiting to go around is, of course, Paul Scott. But meanwhile, we've got Lucas Romano here. Now, can Romano find a way to get himself ahead of Prouting as he crosses the line? No, he cannot. So he stays P3 within class. What about Sean Scooter? Well, Scooter's peeling into the pits and he loses the rear end. Now, I'm not sure if there was contact, but it looks like a lot of drivers coming on in, and the only driver then to come on through in the LMP is Paul Scott. He moves up to P3, so Scott finds a way to pit Paul Williams to a 31.703, and then we've got Kurt Van Hernacker here coming across that line in short order, and what can Van Hernacker do here? He does improve, but it's not enough to move him from P6 in class. So that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and well, it is Stefan Vessels who's taken pole in the LMP class. In the GT3 Pros, it's Peter Lemkins, and then it is Galtieri who has taken a pole position by half a second over Tristan Dino Brega in the GT3 AM class there, with Mark Sykes a further 3 tenths down. And well, what a qualifying session there. Not too many difficulties for our drivers. Most drivers getting in good laps throughout, and now we are only moments away from going racing, as we do now just patiently wait for going racing, as we do have just a little bit of overtime here whilst everybody is settling down and we wait to go racing at Watkins Glen International. As we are now waiting for the grid to be formed and we transition over to the race, the first of our 2 races tonight, the sprint race, of course, the 15-minute sprint race. Let's take you through that grid order once again. Stefan Vessels takes the maiden pole position of this series for the LMP2 class in what is a 131.109. 5 attempts clear of Michael Price, P2 from iRacing, Racing Team Astra Blues driver, taking the advantage there. The privateer of Paul Scott on row number 2, P3. Alongside him, Paul Williams from Team Tetra Rouge, and it's Sam Holman from Hollerton Racing, and alongside him, Baz Meacham in P6 there from BRM. Jack Wyborn from the MRC team in P7, alongside him Mark Baker from Team Tetra Rouge in P8, and then Jonathan Collins completes our LMP2 class in P9 on row number 5. Alongside him, our pole sitter for the GT3 Pros, and that is Peter Lemkins, who'll be starting P10. He's got behind him Lorenzo Galtieri, who kicks off our 6th row for the GT3 AMs there, pole position for the GT3 AMs in the hands of Lorenzo Galtieri from Racing Team Astra Orange, and alongside him is the privateer of Matthew Prouting in P12. Behind them, Lucas Romano and Didi Valemi, both GT3 Pro drivers there, the RP Motorsport driver just pipping them at change by DB1 driver by a small margin, with Dirt Bounce and Sean Scooter behind on row number 8. Row number 9 consisting of Tristan Di Nobrega for the GT3 AMs, Racing Team Astra's blue driver, a debutant in this series as of today, with Jeremy DeBova alongside him from the GT3 Pros in them at change by DB1 Mercedes. Lambert Widder and Mark Seitz complete our 10th row there. It is the case the Dutchman in the GT3 Pro class just qualifying ahead of the GT3 AM driver from NXTGEN Racing, and it's Navarro DeBova and Arjen Kregel on row number 11. The two GT3 AMs going side by side, and there's some fantastic racing action between them in Season 2 of the GT3 Championship, and we're expecting more sparks to fly today. Kurt Van Hoenacker and Gus Franken make up our 12th row, with the GT3 AM ahead of the GT3 Pro, and then behind them we do have what is Davide Favo, and we'll sorry, my apologies, skipping a row there. Row number 13 is made up of Mark Arrowsmith and James Lates, with Davide Favo and Elwin Sykes on row number 14, Andrew Withers and Liam Tack on row at number 15, and it's Chris Keenan who lines up on our final row on his lonesome for Team MRC in the Belgian machinery, as we wait for Chris Keenan to take away from the back of the grid. But we look to the front of the grid, and it's Stefan Vessels who will be taking everybody away for the manual formation lap here as our drivers get underway and as they make the way around the circuit behind the safety car. This of course being a full formation lap, we've extended the formation lap to give our drivers more time to be able to warm up their tyres and get set and get familiar, as we are now only moments away from going racing here at Watkins Glen International. As we look to that blimp camera, the distant camera here, and it is the case all of our drivers in their splendour. As we can see, it is the case the GT3's there waiting for that 5-second gap, and it's Peter Lemkins who will lead that gap. As you can see, that he's given a lot of space as he makes his way on through. And we can see that from the circuit map as well in the top right corner of your screen as he makes his way down and around as well. But we look to the closer cameras here, and it'll be a bit of an unusual situation for Peter Lemkins. The last time he led, we never led once in the GT3 Season 2 Championship, and this will be a new position for him. He'll be leading them all away in the GT3 class, and we wait to see how he gets on. And also a little bit further back, of course, Mark Sykes here, who we ride on board with very briefly. For Mark Sykes, this will also be quite a unique situation. He's been up here before, he's been in high qualifying positions, but it is the case it's been a long time since he's qualified so well. Will he be able to convert what was a P3 in class in qualifying into a podium come the end of this sprint, or will it be the case that it doesn't go his way? We'll have to wait and see. He'll of course want to achieve the best he possibly can, but we will find out as the distance goes on. As we look back to the exterior camera here, and you can see just a little bit further back there, Mark Arrowsmith in a very fetching liveried Ferrari 488 there, and I do believe that image there a bit of a tribute to Valentino Rossi, who's recently taken part, or started to take part in the GT World Challenge Championship. You can see that in fact VR46, so I get the feeling that Arrowsmith is a Valentino Rossi fan, and I bet he was glued to the television when he saw Rossi take his way out in the Team WRT 46 machine at Imola only a couple of days ago. But still, as we earlier this week, I should say, but as they make their way on around right now, it is the case we look from our GT3 drivers up to the front of the field, and Michael Price here. Of course, this is the first time we've seen him in the NXTGEN Racing Series, but he'll be battling with Stefan Vessels, qualifying P2 here. And the Excite Racing driver, I do wonder whether he will be pushing it at the start, or whether he'll look to settle and just make sure he gets on that podium come the end. Of course, season opener, you want to try and make a statement, but some drivers may be a little bit hesitant to go too far in terms of making that statement. I'd definitely be in that latter ball in terms of if I qualify P2, I'd want to finish P2, make sure I get those points on the board, but only Michael Price will know what's going through his head at this point in time and what he plans to do here. And Vessels, of course, in a very familiar territory in terms of out-qualifying the rest of his peers, but this time it's an LMP2 machinery. Can he turn that pole position into a win in the sprint? Can he get things off to the flying start? Well, as he makes his way through turn 10 behind the safety car, 2 more corners to go, and then it will be to him to take us to the green and to go racing here as they make their way into those last 2 corners. We're here at Watkins Glen International. It's round number 1 of the PROTO GT3 Championship, as brought to you by NXTGEN Racing. This lobby sponsored by IMB Racewear, and now we are only 2 corners away from going racing. It's lights out and away we go for race number 1 here at Watkins Glen. Stefan Vessels gets a good start, but immediately Price goes on the offensive, but not close enough to go for a move. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, we can see Sam Holman here getting the advantage over Jack Wyborn as they make their way through the opening corner. They come charging on down through here. Jonathan Collins, meanwhile, tucks in behind Paul Williams as Meacham loses a number of places at the start here. Meanwhile, a bit further back in the GT3s by comparison, we see Peter Lemkins here getting a good start as he makes his way down towards the opening corner. Lucas Mano looking for the move on Matthew Prouty. He can't find it as he has to wait a little bit later. All of our drivers drivers coming on through as they make their way out to the opening corner. A bit wider, a couple of drivers bringing it back under speed. As we see Mark Sykes here, being a bit of pressure from behind from Mark Arrowsmith. In fact, Sykes losing out to De Boven and Van Hoenacker on the opening lap already and falling a little bit down the orders. He's got Arrowsmith now poised to go on the offensive as they make their way up towards the bus stop chicane here. It's close, as we can see behind Davide Farber. They're looking for a potential move. The Racing Team Astra orange driver, but he's not close enough. He has to give Craig all the space and time of day. As we see Craig looking for a very late move there, but he can't quite find it versus Mark Sykes, but he dared to dream and he went for it and he almost got it as they make their way down and around through the outer loop. But Sykes already under a lot of pressure as they come roaring on down and around and down towards turn number 7. But meanwhile, we look from them to back up the order a little bit further as we see Collins here still getting pursuit of Baz Meacham as they make their way through the right-hander at turn number 9. And as they come up towards 10 here, Collins using a bit more of the width of the road as Paul Scott has had an off and he drops all the way to the back of the order, just getting a little bit wrong going onto the grass. A little bit an uncommon mistake, but he makes his way back up to speed now. He'll be kicking himself for that one, and there's no doubt about it. But meanwhile, Jeremy DeBover here, we look down to P19 in what is the GT3 Pro class. And for those who are wondering, by the way, how do you tell the classes using that timing down the left-hand side of your screen? If they've got a pink tag against them between their name and their position number, that means they're LMP. If it's green, they're GT3 Pro, and if they're orange, that means GT3 AM. Hopefully that will help distinguish between the drivers a little bit more than me telling you who's who. I'll give him a point, but as our drivers make their way around right now after the opening lap, you can see already on the track map how far ahead the LMPs are. The GT3s, coming to the end of their opening lap, but there hasn't been too many overtakes, to be fair, in the both classes so far. The overtakes that have occurred have been quite limited, but I say that Paul Scott, after making that horrendous mistake coming out of turn number 9 that cost him dearly, immediately going back on the offensive, and Mark Baker gives way to him into the bus stop chicane here. Well, that's one place gained by Paul Scott. How many more is he going to regain over the course of the proceedings tonight? We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, we look back to our GT3 Pros here as Matthew Prouting, P13 overall, P3 in class, going on the offensive here versus Lucas Romano and trying to find a way on through as they make their way down towards the bus stop here. Now, will he go for it this early on, or will he be patient? That'll be the question. He decides to wait here. There's no need to go for it so far. It's a 15-minute race, not a 5-minute race. And as they make their way down out the bus stop once again, see Prouting getting very close. Ooh, goodness me, he just loses the rear end a little bit there. Under braking, transitioning the weight forward under braking, and he brings it together. That could have been catastrophic. He's lost a couple of places, but nothing compared to what it could have been in terms of losses. Prouting with the catch of the day there so far, and well, if he doesn't play cricket, get this man into fielding, because he's going to be an absolutely brilliant catcher as he makes his way down towards turn number 8 as he comes through the right-hander. Sean Scott to gain a place as a result of it, of course, as the Racing Team Astra Blue driver makes his way in hot pursuit of dirt bounce, and you see Prouting runs even further wide there, and Tristan Di Nobrega, the GT3 AM driver, now comes on through here, and I think Jeremy DeBover is also going to seize on the opportunity. Now, as they make their way through the right-hander at turn number 9, DeBover, of course, chasing after Sean Scooter, but he's got quite a gap and he's got Nobrega between the two of them now as they make the way on around. But I do think for Jeremy DeBover at this point, he's just settling in, of course, new machinery and learning it as they go. But you can see just a little bit further back there, that is Kurt Van Hoenacker, who's now looking at a move on Prouting here. And then a change by DB2 driver, who is an AM, he's not a pro. He won't be battling with Prouting for points, he's just battling with him for track position. And Prouting into the pits, so there's something wrong with the car since that mistake. And Prouting is coming on in, he's not happy and the team aren't happy with the car. And as a result, that could be Prouting's race all said and done, because in this sprint a pit stop just costs you so much time. As we see James Slates here looking for the move versus Withers. Withers on the outside, Slates on the inside, and with the RP Motorsport driver going for the classic pass into turn 1 into 90 right. As we see in the rear of your picture there, that was Chris Keenan just getting the rear a little bit screwiffy, although that's not a proper word, so a little bit sideways we should say is the four-ball term, as he brings it back together. Now as they make the way around, we do see Lamont Wedder also into the pits as Dirt Bounce. Meanwhile, will Dirt Bounce hold up a second? Dirt Bounce has been passed here by DDD Blamey, and I think Bounce has got it a very, very roll through bus stop as he makes his way around. And we're hearing that a little bit further down the order, there's been a bit of an incident involving Navarro DeBova, who's dropped all the way down the order. In fact, he's gone very wide and off at the bus stop chicane, and that is also Mark Arrowsmith, who's had something go very wrong. Unfortunately, we can't take a look back at that due to limitations of what we can and cannot do with replay files at iRacing. I can tell you something has gone wrong, and as a result, well, Navarro DeBova has dropped all the way down the orders. That's Mark Sykes into the wall there, and Mark Sykes has jumped to the pit, so Mark Sykes having a very, very difficult opener there into the wall at turn number 7, and I think it's just a mistake under braking that's cost him. But meanwhile, we look a little bit further up the order, and we see Jack Wyborn here in the LMPs battling with Sam Holman here. Wyborn on the right, Holman on the inside, and as they make their way to the bus stop chicane here, Wyborn not able to find his way on through, but meanwhile Williams watches on here as we ride on board the roll cage of Paul Williams from Team Tetra Rouge as he tries to find a way on through. We're hearing that Chris Keenan's had a bit of a moment elsewhere on circuit, he's got it a bit wrong, but Paul Williams right now looking to pounce versus Wyborn and Holborn as they make their way down through turn 7 and in towards 8. And of course, in these machineries and a high-speed circuit such as this, one of the things you've got to keep in mind, of course, is slipstream, and the fact that the cars in front of you are going to be punching a nice hole in the air, and as a result, that's going to enable you to go a bit faster, as we see there. Holman getting it a little bit wrong under the turning, coming out to turn at number 8 and up into 9, and will Williams try and go over the move up the inside? He looks for it, but he's not close enough, and I think Williams will be kicking himself at the fact he wasn't close enough to capitalise, whereas Wyborn was, with Holman with a little mistake there, just a little bit of snap oversteer on the power, and as they make the way out right now, it is the case that Holman has lost one place to Wyborn, but he hasn't lost both of them as they make their way through turn number 11 and come to the end of another lap once again. But Williams will now be waiting and thinking, can he put some pressure on Holman to try and get the place as they make their way on through, as they come charging past the wall there, the camera's shaking with the ferocity at which they come through, and as they make their way down towards turn number 1 once again, we can see it is the case that Holman already wanted to come back at Wyborn. I think he said, you've not seen anything yet, as they make the way coming out of 1 and down up towards 5 they go. But as they make their way up the hill through the S's once more here, we do look a little bit further down the order, and we do look to what is one Tristan Dinabrega here, who's trying to, goodness me, Tristan Dinabrega, I look to him and it's the case, he's in the wall there as he makes his way off circuit, he tries to get out of the way of everyone. Not sure what's happened there, other than I think he's lost the rear end coming out of turn number 8, and well, that has cost him very dearly as he is running in a very comfortable P2 in the GT3 AM class, and now he's got it all to do again as he brings himself back up to speed on Liam Tapp, gives him the space, gives it a little bit of safety. I think Liam Tapp leading a little bit too considerate as he flashes his lights there, and we'll bring up that battle box for you in the bottom right corner of your screen so you can see the relative deltas drivers close to one another as we switch between them. But right now it is the case that Tristan Dinabrega having a major moment, and it has cost him oh so dearly, as now we look back up to Paul Scott here, and it does seem that's Meechan who's running out the slipstream here now, as Meechan had a little bit of a mistake. Was he just going to fence? Oh goodness me, and going up the inside there was Paul Scott, and well, that was very daring by Paul Scott, but he's got the move done versus Sam Holman, and it was Holman who was going quite slowly, I should clarify. In fact, Holman really struggling to get through the corners. I think Holman's got damage of some description, because that Dallara is not looking happy as he tries to take it through the corners. We've got a car spun, and I believe that is Chris Keenan into the wall, unless I'm mistaken. It's the driver in P26, and that's Chris Keenan who's in the wall there, pointing the wrong way at turn number 11 into 12. But Sam Holman with a major difficulties by looks of things. We'll have to see where it's going to cost him dearly. But meanwhile, we look from them back to the GT3s, and it is the case that Liam Tack on the offensive as he's just past Davide Favo, who's had it go very wrong at what was the bus stop chicane. He's brought it back together. I don't think he's gone into the wall, picked up any damage. I mean, the only damage he's done is a little bit of flat spot into his tyres. But we look from him back up to Jonathan Collins here. Collins going into the bus stop now as the LMP starts to converge on the GT3s, and it is the case that Collins finds a way through outside to inside, inside to outside, and the privateer gets it done for P7 in class as he gets past Sam Holman. Now as they make the way down and around through turn number 6 and up towards 7, will Holman try and come back here? I think if he does, they both go deep there, and in fact Holman locking up in order to stop the car from going into the back of Collins, and you can see as they make the way past the GT3 machine of Jeremy DeBova there. This is what we're talking about in terms of the fact that GT3s, they don't have to get out of the way. It is the case that the LMPs have got to find their way safely on through. But it should be pointed out, as the LMPs catch up, they've now got to find their way past the GT3s whilst also maintaining track position, and this is where the ultimate challenge of the multi-class racing comes in, because these LMP drivers, of course, they're racing their own race, but now they have to deal with the fact they've got to cut their way through an order of cars which are all racing as well, and well, it's the case that everyone's got to try and be aware of one another. It's not the case they can plead ignorance, but as they make their way through, and here's Paul Scott, for example, you can see he's catching up to the back of Baz Meechan, who's just had to deal with Matthew Prouting, and Meechan wasn't able to take the line he wanted through turn 12, and this is going to give Paul Scott the mother of all opportunities as they come roaring down into turn number 1, but it's not enough this time around. But he was looking at, as we're hearing, that Lorenzo Gualtieri has come into the pits as well as the GT3 AM driver, and as well, no, he has not come into the pit lane. My apologies, that is a glitch on our timing screen. Not sure what happened there, but we thought he'd come into the pits. He hasn't, so he is still leading the GT3 AM class. But we can see Paul Scott here looking for the move versus Meechan as they make their way into the bus stop chicane. He can't find it. Meechan goes defensive on the inside, parks it nicely, and as a result, Paul Scott now has to wait once again. Meanwhile, Sam Holman has got back ahead of Collins, I should point out, although we didn't see it on camera, in the battle for P7 in the LMP class as they make the way on through. 10 minutes complete, 5 minutes to go, 1/3 of this race remaining as they make their way down and around. It's anyone's guess how it'll play out. But meanwhile, Mark Baker here, the Team Tetra Rouge #2 driver, chasing after what is Collins as they make their way down into the braking zone for turn number 8. And you can see there, Elwin Sykes, we just staying out of the way in the end, but they both had to navigate around the McLaren as they make the way up the hill now down towards turn number 9. They go. And as they come charging on through here, it is the case the closest action can be found in the LMP class at this point in time. It's a little bit cleared out the GT3 class in terms of the gaps between our drivers, spaced out I should say, but we expect some battles may kick off a bit later as Baker goes up the inside here of Holman, or of Collins I should say. He gets the move just about done. Now will Collins try and come back at him? That'll be the question. If Collins is going to do so, he'll do it later on in the lap, as meanwhile we can see it is the case that Baz Meacham here falling behind Paul Scott, and I think he should have a bit of difficulty in cutting his way past the different drivers, but at the same time he's got some time remaining. He's got 4 minutes to go plus the final lap here, so I would not be surprised if Meacham, the BRM driver, is now looking at going on the full offensive here as he makes his way up the hill, but he does have Liam Tack to cut past first. As you can see there, he goes past Liam Tack very smoothly. In fact, Liam Tack moving off the racing line for him, which is very kind, as they make their way on towards the straight here, heading up towards the bus stop chicane once again. As we look from them to a bit further down our order, looking to our GT3s, we can see Dirt Bounce here, currently P4 in the GT3 Pros, P13 overall, and looking to try and find a way to get past DDD Blaming in equal machinery here, both of them in the Mercedes AMG machine, as they make the way out of the right-hander at turn number 8 and head up towards turn number 9. And as they come charging on through here, I think Dirt Bounce has got a lot of work to cut out for him if he wants to try and find a way on through. Meanwhile, Spiegel is trying to find a way on through here. We'd see Paul Scott is trying to find a way to go around the outside of Gus Frank, and he gets it done. He uses the downforce plus also the mechanical grip of the P217 to get it done. He's chasing after Paul Williams here as we ride on board with Paul Williams. We look back from the gearbox of Team Tetrarudis driver as he makes his way out to turn number 9 and up towards 10. But as you can see right now, it is the case of Scott bearing down on him, and as they make the way out to the left-hander, they've got 2 more corners before the end of this lap, and Will Williams there making his way past what was at the time Argent Kregel, and the same with Paul Scott here. And I think Williams would be hoping that he could somehow get past the GT3 but trap Paul Scott behind the GT3 car by comparison, as Williams is catching the GT3s at the worst possible time, either on corner entry, alternatively on the exit, and he can't deploy the full power. And as he makes his way into 1 there, as the first sign of Paul Scott catching the GT3 at inconvenient time behind Heinlacher on the entry into 1. But as they make the way through the S's now, you can see just how close Paul Scott's getting here as he gets closer. He's breathing down the neck as they make the way through turn number 4, and as they come roaring up the hill here, it is the case that we'll see Paul Scott peel to the outside as they make the way into the bus stop. Now will Paul Scott have done enough here to get it done? No, Paul Williams goes defensive and he holds the position for now, and Paul Scott waits for another opportunity. Meanwhile, Sam Holman holds on versus Collins as they make their way through the bus stop chicane and down in towards turn number 6 here. Holton Racing holding on versus Collins as they make the way on through, but these two, the rivalry only intensified, as meanwhile in the GT3s here, we can see it is the case that Dirt Bounce looking for a way for P3 to get onto that podium in the GT3 Pro class versus DDD Blaming. Of course, these two had some great battles in the GT3 championships, but it is the case they make the way down the back straight here. He's very close, but Bounce not close enough to consider a move. And I think he was a bit cautious there with the fact he had Wyborn coming on through. Excuse me, as they make the way down through the left hand here, turn at number 10. Now as they roll through the corner here, it is the case that Bounce will have 1 more lap to try and get this done. The leader is going on to the final lap as of now, and that is Stefan Vessel's the overall leader, I should say, in the LMPs and overall. And it is the case that Bounce right now trying to find 1 more way through, but speed away through, and this is exactly where it's a horrible situation where you've got 2 GT3s battling, and you can see Paul Scott flashing his lights furiously here to try and distract Paul Williams, whilst at the same time saying to the GT3s, I'm coming through, don't hold me up, because if he gets held up he won't have a chance to try and come past Paul Williams. And Williams has gained because of this. You can see the gap opened up to half a second as they made their way through 1, and whilst now Paul Scott will gain in the toe of Paul Williams, it's not going to be enough, I don't think, unless he absolutely sends it into the bus stop. Paul Williams puts the car right in the middle of the road here to say to Paul Scott, if you're coming through, you're not going to find a way through. And as they make the way through the bus stop here, it is the case that Paul Scott holds on once again as they make the way down and around through the outer loop. They roar on down here on their final tour of the circuit in the sprint race. And as they come down and around through the left hand here, I think Paul Scott, if he's going to do it now, he's going to have to look for it. Going through at turn number 8 up into 9. He's all over the back of Paul Williams. and he's been like this for some time, to be fair, but he just cannot seem to find the last ingredient in the puzzle to be able to get it done as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, a little bit further up the road, and we do have to cut to him because it is the case he's making his way into those final two corners. Well, he qualified on pole by a huge margin, and as he makes his way through the final two corners, he ended the season on a high, and he's kicked off this season on an all-new high. It will be Stefan Wessels from South Africa of Racing Team Astra Blue who takes the overall win here in the sprint at Watkins Glen and the win in the LMP class. Michael Price comes home in P2 in a great drive for Michael Price. Jack Wyborn completes the LMP 2 AM podium as he crosses the line there, and then it will be Paul Williams who just about holds off what is Paul Scott. In fact, Paul Scott's made a mistake, and it's Baz Meacham who comes home P5 in the end, ahead of Mark Baker, Sam Holman, Jonathan Collins and Paul Scott. And then it will be Peter Lemkins, he's just crossed the line, who takes the win in the GT3 Pro class, the RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver. A superb drive from Lemkins, and he finishes ahead of Lucas Romano here, and Didi Valaming in the end held off dirt bounce to complete the GT3 Pro podium. And meanwhile, it will be Lorenzo Gualtieri who takes the win in the GT3 AM class in what has been a fantastic qualifying session, translated into a flawless drive start to end. Kurt Van Hoenacker comes home P2 in the GT3 AMs, and it is Arjan Kregel who completes the GT3 AM podium. Oh my goodness, what a fantastic race from start to finish from all of our drivers. And well, to give you a quick view of all those results, you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, it is the case that in the LMP AMs, it was Wessels ahead of Price and Wyborn on the podium. Williams and Meacham completing the top five. Baker, Holman, Collins and Scott completing their order. Meanwhile, in the GT3 Pros, it was Lemkins ahead of Romano and Vlaming for the podium. Bounce and Franken coming home at P4, P5. Proutin, Debova, that's Jeremy Debova, and Sean Scooter P8 there, and Vedder P9. And then in the GT3 AMs, it was Gualtieri ahead of Van Hoenacker and Kregel for the podium, and then Tristan Di Nobrega and Liam Tack completing the top five. Navarro Debova P6, Davide Favo P7, Elwin Sykes P8, James Slates P9, Chris Keenan P10, and then last but not least, well, not last but not least, but other drivers who were not able to make it to the end on the lead lap. We did have Andrew Withers, Mark Sykes and Mark Arrowsmith in the GT3 AM class, and also we had Lamet Wedder who peeled into the pits quite early on as well, and he finished 3 laps down. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the sprint, and we are going to be taking an approximate 10-minute break. We'll be back at 56 minutes past the hour, so at 4 minutes to 9 for the build-up to the feature race. You won't want to miss it. We'll be back soon. Take care until then. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in the build-up for the feature race of the Proto GT3 Championship IMB lobby. That's lobby 2, round number 1 here at Watkins Glen International. We are now moving on to race number 2, the feature race, which will be kicking off just slightly after 9 o'clock this evening, that being at 2100 hours British Summer Time or UTC +1. But as we look back to the circuit once again, well, a brief bit of reflection on what was a fantastic sprint race, particularly the battling within the LMP2 class. And it was the case of battles up and down the field, albeit between this man and what was his peers behind him, and particularly Stefan Vessels versus what was Michael Price, and also within there we also saw what was Mark Baker and Baz Beecham. It was the case that Vessels and Price really in a little bit of world of their own, pulling away from the rest of their peers, and Wyborn coming home in P3, and it was between Meacham, Holman and also Mark Baker and Paul Williams where the battling all occurred, and some fantastic battling between them over the course of the racing. In the GT3 PRO class, it was the case that Peter Lemkins was on point on a major form throughout and looking very strong, and well, in the end it was the case that Lemkins finishing ahead of his peers by a little bit of a margin and looking very good going into the second race. But do remember, of course, it will now be a full reverse grid separated by car class, so Lemkins is going to be starting right at the back within the GT3s, and he's going to have to find his way all the way through, not just the pros, but also the AMs if he wants to take that win in the GT3 class. We'll have to wait to see how he gets on. And well, meanwhile, Lorenzo Gualtieri having that very strong performance and that win in the GT3 AM class. It seems as though he's in a little bit of a world of his own, but we'll have to wait to see how it plays out when he has to now find his way through the field as well. In terms of other talking points, we did see the whole conglomeration of the LMPs coming up behind and having to lap their way past the GT3s and how that worked out. We did see in the chat a little bit of a clarification from what was Paul Scott in the YouTube chat to say that he had a half spin on the last lap avoiding the GT3 coming through the final set of corners, and that's what ended his battle with Paul Williams. But he remarked to the fact it was a great battle with Paul Williams. We can also see that Arjun Kregel in the YouTube chat, who as he's taken to the circuit once again now, I think he's in the pit lane, just saying that he didn't realise at the time, and he didn't know up until we pointed it out just now that he had P3 in class, indeed a third place in the sprint for what was the AM driver there. Fantastic drive from Arjen Kregel. Also to say hello to Alistair Kirk and also to Mark Sykes there in the YouTube chat. And if you are tuning in via Twitch, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. I know there's some of you out there who tune in via Twitch rather than YouTube, but we can also see in the YouTube chat all of the South African crew there, Racing Team Astra crew as well. Great to see you. We can see you there, Stefan, also Stiganator, just to name two of you. Also Werner Pretorius, it's great to have you there, who enjoyed the cricket reference earlier. We'll be very careful. We may add some more cricket references in there, or we may end up getting bowled out by some of them. You never know. They may just simply slip off the slip, but we'll have to wait and find out. And I'm going to stop with the cricket references there before I end up overdoing them too rapidly. But as we are now only a minute away from going into the race, it's all to play for here. And the thing to keep in mind as well, when we go into this feature race, it will be the first time in anger that our drivers will be competing in the more strategic race. Now we have that one mandatory pit stop, and we saw in the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier this week that the pit stop itself wasn't a major factor in terms of when it came, but what was a major factor was the case that a safety car was deployed very early on in the race, and that gave drivers an opportunity to jump into the pits, fill the car up to maximum fuel, and see whether they could take the car to the end, particularly the GT3 class. And a number of drivers didn't quite make it to the end and actually had to creep across the line with zero fuel. Some actually falling shorter line, particularly Billy Fletcher was the one who was hit the most by that. And also I do believe Matthew Addy to a lesser extent. So it's all for them to think about, but we're hoping not to see an early safety car. It's the last thing we want. We don't want an instant like what we saw in Lobby 1 on Wednesday. We do not want to see all the GT3s that are crashing into the walls at turns 2 through to 4. That was at least 15 cars involved in that incident, and that's the last thing we want to have happen. As we say hello there to Skivit76 in the Twitch chat. Good to see you tuned in, Skivit, and I hope you're doing well. But as we do wait, we're now only moments away from forming that grid, and well, how will it all play out as the MRC teams, Chris Keaton there gets it a little bit wrong going down into the right-hander turn number 9. We did see him spin a couple of times over the course of the sprint race. That Audi just proving a little bit difficult, but I'm sure he'll bring it back together over the course of the feature race, if not future rounds. But as the grid is now being formed, unfortunately we can't walk you through the grid immediately. That's one of the limitations that we do have with the replay file that we are using. But what we will do is once that grid gets underway for the manual double file rolling start, we will take you through that grid order from top to bottom. But of course we will have our LMPs starting right at the front. And I do believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, it's going to be Sam Holman who takes us away from the front of the field. Although we will get confirmation of that very shortly. But it will be up to the LMPs to kick things off, as we just see him waiting here right now, waiting to go. In fact, he won't be quite the first driver to take us away. In fact, I think that may be... Well, let's just wait until we actually get that order put off the line, rather than try and play guesswork. But as we look to the blimp camera right now, all of our drivers line up here in the gridding procession. We can see the GT3s behind the LMPs, and as we look down towards the back of the field here, gridding complete, we do have what is 31 drivers taken to the field once again. It will be the case that as we see the grid now is shuffled up, it will be Jonathan Collins who starts on pole there with Paul Scott alongside him, and it will be Mark Baker and Sam Holman on the second row, followed by Baz Beecham and Paul Williams on row number 3, and then Jack Wyborn and what is Michael Price on row number 4, before Stefan Vessels all by his lonesome in the LMP class on row number 5 there. He will have alongside him Andrew Withers, who had that very difficult start to his evening in the sprint race, in the end finishing last of the GT3s that were classified, so he'll be starting on pole for the GT3 class, as we see Sean Scooter just alongside him, or in fact behind him. He'll be starting off row number 6, and alongside Scooter will be James Slates. We'll then have Chris Keenan and Jeremy DeBoer forming up what is row number 7 there, and well, not Jeremy DeBoer, Elwin Sykes in fact, as the main one through. Jeremy DeBoer will be kicking off row number 8, and it'll be Davide Father alongside him, and it'll be Matthew Prouting and Liam Tack who line up alongside one another on row number 9, and it'll be Navarro DeBoer and what is, I believe, Tristan Di Nobrega line up on row number 10. After Nobrega with that very strong start was undermined with a moment where he married the car with the wall as he made his way around the circuit in the final half of the sprint race. Kicking off our 11th row will be Gus Frank, with a good performance from the Dutchman in the Mercedes RP Motorsport Seniors. Alongside him will be Arjen Kregel, and then it will be Kurt Van Hoyenacker, who is joined on row number 12 by the GT3 AM winner in the sprint, and that was Lorenzo Gualtieri. And then behind them it will be Dirk Bouts and DDD Belaming. They'll be lined up and sharing row number 13, and it will be Lucas Romano and Peter Lemkins who line up on row number 14. And Peter Lemkins, of course, our overall GT3 winner and our GT3 Pro winner in the sprint race, and he completes the reversed grid. And then at the back of the field, they were not classified as finishing race number 1 of the sprint race. They start right at the back. It is Lambert Wedder, followed by Mark Sykes on row number 15, and then on row number 16, by his lonesome but no least, it's Mark Arrowsmith there, starts in P31, and he will have it all to do from the back of the field as he makes his way on around right now. As they make the way through, what goes through your mind in these situations, of course, with that reverse grid, particularly if you're in a situation such as Peter Lemkins? Well, I think what you've got to be thinking about now is the fact that you've shown that you can lead all the way through, but now it's a completely different game, which is you've got to try and cut your way through the order. But at the start of this race, you need to play it smart, because there could be a huge incident in the opening couple of corners or the opening lap, and if so, you don't want to get entangled in that incident. You want to cut through all the pieces and pick up, say, 5-6 places all in one go and simplify things going deeper into the race. And I think Peter Lemkins will know that more than most in his mind as he makes his way down the back straight here up towards turn number 9. As he makes his way through here, I believe we will start to get the separation of what is the GT3s, although Andrew Withers there a little bit too close to the LMPs there. I think he's not quite got the sequence underhand, or at least it would seem that way, although I think the GT3s may back off a little bit later on. But we look to the front of the field now, where it will be to Paul Scott and Jonathan Collins to take us away from that front row, and they'll be going racing. We'll be kicking off an hour's worth of racing here at Watkins Glen International in race number 2 of Lobby 2, the IMB Raceway Lobby, as we make our way into the 1 hour feature. We go at the green. And it's lights out and away. We're going immediately. Sam Holman going on the brake here as they do a reverse motor of Paul Scott here. Paul Scott caught napping as they make the way to the open corner. It's free wide and Paul Scott gets squeezed. And as a result, oh goodness me, Jonathan Collins has turned as a result of a contact there. And as they make the way up the hill, well, now that is a sight for sore eyes. But it continues all the same here. Sam Holman breaks away. Jack Wyborn now tries to capitalise on the situation as they make the way up through turn number 4 and up towards 5. We stay with the LMPs for a brief moment as they go on the main straight here, and you can see see Wyborn defending, but Meachem's going to look up the inside. He gets the move done on Paul Scott, does he? As he loses the rear, and Meachem goes for a spin here, but he keeps it clear of the wall, but that's not the way he would have wanted it to go. Meanwhile, in the GT3s, we can see it is the case that Sean Scooter trying to come on through versus Andrew Withers. They make their way through turn number 6. It is meanwhile one of those situations where all the GT3 drivers now come on through. Well, the LMPs who've had the bad moments, particularly Meachem, and also to a lesser extent one Jonathan Collins, they've all got to find their way back up the order. As we can see, it is the case in the GT3 class. No major incidents on this opening lap. A couple of drivers have had a bit of a bad moment, not everybody. And looking a little bit further back there, we can see Tristan Dina Rega being forced under attack by James Slates. So James Slates finds his way on through, does the AM driver, versus the RTA Blue Machine as they make the way up the hill and head down towards turn number 9. And we're hearing that Stefan Vessels has retired from the race. It seems as though he's out of proceedings. Well, I presume that's the case. He's jumped all the way out and down the standings. So I believe Vessels has had some sort of technical issue, and that has led to him having to retire so early on. And our race winner in the LMP class in the sprint, where it's all gone from great to perfect to disastrous. As we can see here, Galtieri looking for that potential move soon on Liam Tack, who in turn is trying to find a way past Davide Farber as Tack goes very deep. And as they make the way through the right-hander here, turn number 12, it is the case that Liam Tack trying to go on that offensive as they come to the end of lap number 1 and make the way to lap 2. But now this is where Galtieri's going to look for the move here. Lorenzo Galtieri, as we can see, coming down the inside of the pair of them there. That is Collins in the LMP, who's literally coming through like a knife through hot butter. Galtieri takes the inspiration and goes with it as they make their way out of the corner here. But I do imagine there's going to be plenty more moves coming up here with Galtieri now really at the mercy of the slipstream of the drivers behind. As you can see, we ride on board here with the Lamborghini driver, and you can see how Craig was trying to squeeze his nose in there. He's trying to get on the inside, attack into 4. He does so very well as they make the way up into the braking zone here with the Mustang chicane. They've all got to try and find their way on through. It's the case Galtieri is side by side with Craig Woods. Craig gets on through and he tries to muscle through, and it just looks as though they're all going to be in this contact between Galtieri and Liam Tack, and it takes multiple drivers with them as it's the first major incident of the night. And well, my goodness, it was a little tap between the two drivers, and it's led to so many other drivers getting involved, but the majority have been able to get back underway racing as soon as possible. So not a major incident compared to what we have seen at Watkins Glen, but it's enough to upset the cart for a few drivers as they get themselves back up to speed. Now we look at the GT3s back up towards our LMP drivers. We see Paul Williams here in hot pursuit of what is Jack Wyborn. Of course, Paul Williams would love to be on the podium. He would not want to just finish outside the podium again as he makes his way down towards turn number 1 this time around. And they go on to another lap. They go on to lap number 3 here. They've done their first flying lap around this circuit under full race conditions as they make the way on through for another one. And Paul Williams looking very fighty indeed as they come roaring out to turn 1 and now make the way up the long run towards turn number 5. And the situation for Paul Williams, what he's going to be thinking about here is the fact that Price is not too far behind. And in fact, as Williams immediately starts to look, he moves to the outside here. Is it a little bit premature to go this early? I think he feels confident he can get it done. He goes all in, does Williams. Oh, goodness me. And literally says to Wyborn, but he goes a bit deep. And Wyborn simply says, well, you came in hot. And it's a case that I'm going to be taking that place back as a result. I think Williams will be pinching himself for that one because now he's got Price all over the back of him here. But Williams makes sure that Price is on the outside down into 7. And as a result, Price is not going to find a way on through as they roll on down. We're hearing that Lambert Wedders into the pit lane due to some of the damage picked up in that incident at turn 7 on the previous lap. And as hard drivers bait the way on around right now, well, Williams went for the move. He hasn't lost anything. If you don't venture it, you never know whether you're going to win or lose. It is the case. He's found a way to get past Wyborn. He just now needs to cement that overtake. But meanwhile, we look a bit further down the order here, and we can see Navarro de Bova being passed by James Slates here. And Slates literally flying right now. It is the case that the Audi driver is on a mission, making his way up the order. And as they make the way on around right now, it is the case that James Slates really the man to watch in what is the GT3 AMs. He is on the offensive, and it's beautiful to see as he makes his way through the right hand here of turn number 8, and as he comes on through, his next target is Chris Keenan just up the road. As a bit further back there, we can see Elwin Sykes battling with Tristan Dino Brega, the two Racing Team Astra drivers here. They're going to have to navigate this one carefully. They race for different Racing Team Astra teams. It's the case they're two teams alongside one another, but you can see Elwin Sykes here taking a wide line. He doesn't want to hold up what is effectively his sub-teammate, if you will, and as they make the way through the left hand, oh goodness me, into the wall there. That's Lucas Romano who's gone for a spin coming out of turn number 9, and well, he's bounced off the wall. There's damage to that BMW 04. We can see it had a nasty whack into the wall, and well, he's going to have to manage that car if he's going to take it even deeper into the race. But speaking of another moment, Jack Wyborn, of all the places to lose it into the wall, well, that's the, my goodness, that's Is that the run up towards the bus stop chicane? Yes, it is. So he's been in contact with someone, and we're hearing that Jonathan Collins, Mark Baker, and Paul Williams have all jumped to the pits. So it's the case. I think all four of them, we didn't get the incident on camera, and that is a shame. We'll have to try and bring that back post-race, but it is the case that all four of them have been in a major incident together, and as a result, well, Wyborn survived. What he thinks he survived. He's going to soldier on, but the LMP2 class now only has 5 drivers out on circuit. The other 3 are in the pits, and one of them's retired very early on by looks of things, and that is a sight for sore eyes. As meanwhile, Jeremy over here, well, he's looking to find a way past Andrew Withers as he makes his way down and around turn 6 into 7. He's going to be outside to inside here as they roll on through, and well, he started a bit further up the order with the reverse grid, and he's wasting no time. Here's the senior member of the Debova family in taking places, taking names, and now he's only got a 3.1 second margin to go after Sean Scudder, and he wants to win here. Does the change by DB1 driver. You can see it in the attitude of that car as he makes his way out of turn 8, charging on the offensive as rapidly as possible. As he makes his way down towards turn 9 behind him, Matthew Prouting also looking very firm in terms of trying to take places as the privateer from Eclipse Racing as he makes his way out to 9 and up towards 10. Not close enough at the moment to go for a move, but he's definitely looking for one in the near future if he can follow Debova through. Alternatively, will he just let Jeremy Debova pull him up to the back of Sean Scudder? We'll have to wait to see as they make the way around towards the end of this lap as they come on through. It is the case that we can see further up the road in the battle for the LMP2 lead. It is Paul Scott attacking Sam Holman, or trying to get close enough to get into an attacking position as he makes his way on through. We say hello in the Twitch chat there to Darren Doherty, and well, it's good to see you, Darren, tuning in, and well, it's great to be back as well from my perspective, Darren. Really happy to be back and commentating once again, as we also say hello in the YouTube chat there to Stefan Rasmussen, who's cheering on Navarro Debova. And speaking of the young Navarro Debova, where is he out on circuit? Well, he's currently P12 overall, and it translates into a P4 in the GT3 AM class as he makes his way out the hill here. But he's got Tristan Dino Brega, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, on his 6 as they make the way up the hill here through turn 3, up towards 4 they go. Just ahead of them, of course, we do have Chris Keenan, who's battling here with one at James Slater. They make the way down towards the bus stop chicane. It's 2 by 2 they go into the corner here, and Chris Keenan backs out. Navarro Debova just about shuts the door in time and gets a very nice run through the bus stop chicane, and he's going to look up the inside here. Chris Keenan, who leaves the door slightly open there. Keenan a little bit unsettled with the speed he carried through the bus stop. He's going to have the outside to inside line, however, as they make the way out to the outer loop and down into the left-hander. Debova says no and goes round the outside there. Well, how's that for a bold move as they make the way down? He's got it done, and now making his way up to speed here as he comes into turn number 9. 8, I should say, as we see Tristan Dino Brega here trying to force the move on Chris Keenan as they make the way through the right-hander in 8. He's going to get this done. It's going to be a drag race all the way down towards turn number 9, and the Ferrari looking as though it has the advantage. Now into the pit lane, as I look at my commentary box window, is Jack Wyborn. He's just coming in to do repair work to the car, one would presume. He's decided whatever damage is on that car, he can't live with it, and he will have to use a fast repair. And will he be able to make the fuel go to the end of the race? Well, we saw the Dallara P217s in the Apex Racing Academy feature race was that major incident. They did not peel into the, well, they'd say some of them did peel into the pits, but they all had to take on major fuel midway through the race. So I think it is the case that this is an early pit stop for damage only, not to try and take fuel to go on to the end. As you see the drivers making their way on through, and Tristan Dino Brega here still looking for that potential move versus Navarro Debova as they make the way down towards turn number 1. Onto another lap they go, onto their 6th tour of the circuit, and as we ride on board here with the Ferrari driver, now we'll see him try and get that momentum to make the move that he attempted on the previous lap. As he comes up the hill here, the difference this time will be they won't have a two-way battle ahead of them that they've got to worry about as well, as they make the way up to speed here in the front, up towards the bus stop. We're hearing that Jeremy Debova has been passed by Matthew Prouting. Will we see the younger member of the Debova family be passed here as Dino Brega looks throughout the inside? He's going to commit this time, and as he makes his way through, it's inside to outside, outside to inside, and he gets it done. Does the Racing Team Astra Blue driver. Place gained here, and I think it's the case that Debova's not going to be able to find the way back through as they make the way down towards turn at number 7, and as you can see there is the case that Navarro Debova just tucks in behind and waits for an opportunity at a later date. But as we look from them to the battle for the overall lead and the LMP lead, we can see it's the case that Sam Holman here under increasing pressure as he makes his way through the bus stop and down into 6th, and behind the pair of them you'd think it's a three-way battle, but I have to correct you there because it is the case that it is Jonathan Collins who is a lap down on the pair of them, who's trying to unlap himself right now after that incident earlier on. And as they make their way out to 7 and down towards 8, you can see it is the case now that Collins has backed off to a degree as Paul Scott looks for another way to try and come on through. But as we said a moment ago, we didn't see on camera, Matthew Prouting, the privateer here, has found his way past Jeremy DeBova, so he is up into P6 overall. That's P2 in the GT3 Pro class, and with 10 minutes complete, 50 to go here, Matthew Prouting now looking to hunt down Sean Scooter, who's running a good pace to be fair. And Scooter, the best part of 5.1 seconds ahead of Prouting and DeBova as they make their way on to lap number 7. Now, with that in mind, I think the big question for them will be is what can they do to cut into Scooter's lead? Will they do it on strategy? Will they do it on terms of outright pace? We'll wait and see. But meanwhile, a bit further down here, well, Elwin Sykes has just had to give way to Jack Wyborn, and it is the case of Chris Keenan and also dirt bouts of Peter Lemkins. Well, this is the GT3 train, and as they make the way out for the S's here, well, Elwin Sykes under huge pressure from the Audi of Chris Keenan in the battle for what is the GT3 AM position of P5, and dirt bouts and Peter Lemkins both battling behind, and oh, goodness me, this is going to get very close here. Peter Lemkins has found his way as we've got a car spun. That's James Slate, who's gone for a tumble across the bus stop chicane. I'm not sure if he's been in contact with somebody. No, that's Slate's getting it wrong by himself, but Peter Lemkins has gained the place of Chris Keenan, and dirt bouts now comes on through as well as they make their way down the hill, and this is where it completely opens up because Lucas Romano also trying to come through as well now, but he's going to try and have to go around the outside of Chris Keenan coming down through turn number 7 here. My goodness, and he does it. Chris Keenan, to be fair, had to be obliging there, and it's great respect shown between the two drivers as they make their way down the hill. And a bit further back though, I do believe we may have another slight change of position a bit further back. Well, that might be mistaken. I think that was Kurt Van Hoenacker just having a bit of pressure from Davide Favo, alleviated with the fact that we've got the LMP2s coming on through in the form of our race leader of Holman, also Paul Scott and Michael Price. As they make the way through down and around, it is the case that even further back, Lorenzo Gualtieri, well, he was involved in a little bit of trouble earlier on, but it is the case that Gualtieri continues to push on through here as he tries to find a way past James Slate. Now, he's gained a couple of places, and we have seen a number of drivers come into the pits, including Arjan Kregel. He's come in, he's done a very early pit stop to be fair, and that could take him to the end if he fuel saves wisely. But Gualtieri right now, of course, our race winner in the GT3 AM class, he's tucked in behind James Slate and trying to find a way on through. Will he be able to, though? That is the big question. We will have to wait and see. We have had the retirement, I should point out, by the way, of Paul Williams, also Mark Arrowsmith and Stefan Vessels. We've had 3 retirements from this race so far, and it is the case. Stefan Vessels we lost very early on due to technical issues. Mark Arrowsmith, I believe we lost due to an incident which saw his car put out of action, and Paul Williams was involved in that 4-way collision up towards the bus stop chicane when it has seen him retire the car. They've not been able to repair the Team Tetra Rouge Dallara P217, it would seem, as Gualtieri here continuing to watch our GT3 AM drivers battle it out, but he's just not able to get enough of an overspeed versus James Slate. I think there might be a need to do some fuel saving instead. I think he can use it as an opportunity, as meanwhile we look a little bit further up the down the road. Oh, goodness me, and well, there's been a major incident, and that is Arjan Kregel, who's facing the wrong way, and well, I believe that is Tristan Di Nobrega, who has also been involved in the incident. Yes, he has been. Now, I'm not actually sure if the two of them have come together, what exactly has happened, but we know that Arjan Kregel and Tristan Di Nobrega are both involved in an incident in the run down from 7 to 8, and well, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, this has not been a race to remember compared to race number 1, which was mostly a race to remember until it went wrong towards the end, and Nobrega, I think, trying to inch it to the pit, but I don't know how long it'll be before he simply just has to bring that car to a standstill and say, you know what, I'm going to have to jump to the pits and sacrifice a lap, because he doesn't want to, because that will put him a lap down, and then he's got it all to do even more. A number of drivers having a difficult day in the office. As we say hello in the YouTube chat there to Bazman Black, who I believe is talking, and that is Baz Meacham, who is talking effectively and saying a little bit about the fact that he couldn't see the curve when he got it wrong up at the bus stop chicane, so he hit it way too hard and spun, and he had to wait for the field to come on through. Well, it is the case now that he is trying to find his way back up the order. He's back into P4 already, but he is the best part of 29 seconds off a Price up the road, but we'll wait to see if he can close that gap down. But meanwhile, we cut back here to Davide Favo, who is now under pressure from Mark Sykes as they make their way up through the S's. A bit further back, however, Lorenzo Gualtieri has found a way past Elwin Sykes in the run out to turn 1, and Sykes, well, Elwin Sykes there just not on the pace by comparison. You see he's just dropping away like a stone, as meanwhile Davide Favo battling with Mark Sykes here. Mark Sykes was defending on the inside into bus stop, and he's held the position and looking good. Here's Mark Sykes for what is P5 in the GT3 AM class here after that disastrous sprint race. We was in the wall at this corner just coming up, and he's now finding a way to gain those places very rapidly. Meanwhile, in the LMP class, I can tell you that Michael Price has found a way past Sam Holman just now, whilst we were watching the battle, I should say, between what was Mark Sykes and Davide Favo. These two were exchanging places, and it is the case that Michael Price is now up into P2 overall, and also P2 in the LMP2 class, with 15 minutes complete, 45 to go here, and Price is definitely on a mission. Now, I do wonder whether Holman is perhaps nursing the car and trying to save a bit of fuel here, or do some tyre saving for later in the race, as we're in the Tristan Nino Brega has come through, and Sam Holman is into the pits. He's decided to come in. Now, has Holman got an issue? Well, surely he wouldn't be pitting this early if he didn't have an issue. I would not expect any of the LMP2s to do so this early on the race. We will wait and find out, but it does look as though right now it is not going his way. As meanwhile, we've got Chris Keenan there, who is looking backwards at turn number 11's exit. I think he's had a spin much like in race number 1, where he had a similar situation there, and he's off track. But meanwhile, James Slate's here, as we can see. That is Baz Beecham coming charge on through it, and Slate's now the AM driver looking to come on through versus Elwyn Sykes. Sykes gives him the space there. And I think, in fact, Elwyn Sykes a little bit obliging as they made the way into the corner. I think James Slate is wondering whether to take the space or not as he makes his way up the hill. And as they come charged on through here, it is the case it's going to be Audi versus McLaren. The Audi R8 V10 engine, of course, versus what I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, is a V6 engine in that McLaren, although I could be wrong. But as they make the way down towards the bus stop chicane here, it's the case James Slate's up the inside and gets the move done. He cuts a bit of the grass, however, and as a result, he may have a slowdown. That's definitely going to be an instant point gathered, and well, he's going to have to deal with that, as we do see he gives the place back to Elwyn Sykes there, because he made it off circuit, the move. And now, as he makes his way back up to speed, he's got it all to do again. As meanwhile, Mark Sykes has just been passed by Gualtieri, and Gualtieri continuing to make his way up the order in very rapid fashion is the driver as he makes his way through the right hand here. And I do wonder whether it is the case that he will next be looking at Davide Favo into the final couple of corners, because he's all over the back of Davide Favo right now. The two Lamborghini drivers, of course, as they make the way into the right hand, are both are racing Team Astra Orange, and surely the team manager is going to be on the radio to say to them, look, it is the case where you can see it there, Davide Favo about losing the rear end of Mark Sykes, gives him a tap on the back there as Favo went very wide, and that is very unfortunate for Mark Sykes, who was putting in a really strong performance, and now that contact with the back of what was Elwyn Sykes there has had it all go, well, not Elwyn Sykes, my apologies, Davide Favo has seen it all go wrong, but he's getting himself back up to speed now, and well, Mark Sykes has got it all to do again, as we see that. Thank you to David Brega in the Twitch chat there for clarifying McLaren should be a V8 bi-turbo. Do appreciate that clarification, and well, it is the case that we don't quite know every machinery here, but I do know that the Mercedes has a V8 in it. I know that one, I can promise you, as he makes his way down the main straight here, dirt bounce, and well, right now he is looking to hunt after Navarro de Bova, as Peter Lemkins meanwhile is a little bit further up the road from the pair of them. But as they make their way down through the right-hander here, it is the case that with almost a third of this race completed, as Davide Favo and Chris Keenan are both into the pits. Mark Sykes has stayed out on the circuit. We are seeing quite the rate of attrition in this race, albeit a lot of drivers here pressing on all the same, as Chris Keenan is still in the pit lane from what I gather, and as they make their way around right now, Will Dirt Bounce here and Lucas Romano. What can we say about them? These two have been quite inseparable, and to be fair, they were close together in the sprint race, so it's not uncommon that we should find them close together in this feature. Similar pace from the pair of them, but I do wonder whether they're now thinking about that potential fuel saving and when do they deploy their strategies. Now, in terms of strategy here, the one big consideration for our GT3 drivers is, do they pit early and try to go for an undercut, which is a fuel-saving undercut, whereby they'll need to do a lot of fuel saving to the end of the race? Alternatively, do they pit around the midpoint and go for that fuel, that all-in, no-holds-barred approach? And I think the majority are going for that approach at the moment, because they're not picking up damage. The drivers who are still out on the circuit and have yet to pit. Of course, when those pit stops do start occurring, we'll let you know. We have had Mark Baker come in, of course, in the LMPs, and that's to do repair work on the car. He's now back up into P6 in the overall, and that is the rear of what is the LMP2 field effectively, as the drivers continue to make their way on around. We can see here it is the case of Lucas Romano right now trying to find a way to keep close to Dirt Bounce, who in turn is trying to find his way past Navarro de Bova. Now, of course, the young but challenged by DB2 driver as he makes his way up to speed on the main straight here. He'll be thinking about trying to simply hold on to what is P2 in the GT3 AM class, although to be fair, I say that Andrew Withers is only up the road by the best part of what is 6 seconds or so. So right now, Dallara can keep up this pace, and in terms of the relative delta, he is lapping about half a second faster than Andrew Withers on average. Dallara here could be on course for the win in the GT3 AM class in this feature race, and that would be a huge achievement, and that would give him a huge amount of pep in his step as he makes his way down into turn number 8. Now, as they roll on through, we do look a little bit further up the order because we look to the other member of the Dabova family here of Jeremy Dabova, who is tucked in behind what is there. That's Tristan Di Norega, who is a lap down, and Norega, of course, will be expected to respect the blue flags for his fellow GT3 counterparts in terms of letting them through in due order. He doesn't have to do it immediately, but he has to do it at a convenient place on the circuit as they make the way around and through turn at number 12. But we do see Matthew Prouting coming into the pits there, so Prouting has decided to come in early. So Prouting is going for the fuel saving undercut here, which will mean that he's going to do some fuel saving over the course of the rest of the stint. But I think this is Prouting trying to give himself some clear space on track. Well, this pit stop would put him on our circuit map somewhere around where he come out behind P20 man Mark Sykes if it's a long stop. We reckon, and that would give him a lot of space to play with, to be fair. But these key pit stops occurring as Baz Beecham into the pits as well from what was P3 in the LMP2 class, and the BRM driver here deciding to go in early, and I think this is to try and give himself some track position as well. Could we potentially be seeing 2 stops today instead of just a single mandatory stop? We'll wait and see, because we have not seen a safety car as yet. And that will mean that our drivers will have to do the full 60 minutes with all that fuel as they make the way around, although I have to take on the extra fuel to do the full 60 minutes, I should really say, as we look back to that battle between Lucas Romano and Dirt Bounce, what is P4 in the GT3 Pro class here. These two absolutely inseparable right now. And, well, we've just seen Matthew Prouting go past our commentary box window in the pit lane and actually come back out circuit. And, well, we said that he'd come out behind Mark Sykes. He's come out behind Mark Sykes probably approximately 8 seconds. And I think Prouting has done that to give himself space on circuit because he's got nobody near him, ahead of him or behind him. And that is exactly what you want when you take an early pit stop. You want a lot of space in circuit, and now Prouting can make that work. Meanwhile, Lucas Romano still giving that pursuit. We look a bit further down the road to James Slates here as we ride on board with the Audi R8 driver as he gives pursuit of Elwyn Sykes ahead of him, the McLaren MP4 12C. Now, as they make the way down the hill here and in towards turn at number 8. Well, James Slates, of course, was very fast in the early portion of this race. And then he had that moment going through the bus stop chicane where he ends up piking it on the grass area, pointing the wrong way. He's put himself back up to speed. He's lost a lot of time and places for that mistake. As we see Jack Wyborn then, the LMP2 coming from the right of both of them. And we can see Slates here. He will be hoping that Wyborn makes Sykes go a little bit wide at turn 9. He does, and that enables Slates to gain a massive amount of time under braking through the corners. But he goes a little bit deep into turn number 10. He brings it back together, but he makes a little bit of an uncharacteristic mistake. And as they make the way into turn 11 now, it is the case that both drivers driving on the ragged edge, it would seem, as they make the way into the right-hander at turn number 12. Now, as they come on through the right-hander here, I think the challenge will be for Elwyn Sykes is how long can he keep James Slates at bay. Slates is closing on him rather rapidly as they both go across that timeline, and Slates gained half a second on that lap alone. You can see it into turn 1 there as they make the way on through. The Elwyn Sykes is not in a comfortable place, and in fact he's had a poor run coming out 1. It's going to be a long run up towards the bus stop. I think Slates could be given a chance here of going for the move as they make the way through 3 into 4. They complete the S's, and this is where Slates going to look for the move. He tucks it on the inside here, and Elwyn Sykes does not offer a heavy defense. I think he's thinking about the bigger pitch here and not wanting to fight too hard as they make the way into the bus stop chicane, and Slates comes on through there, albeit with quite a big whack to the apex curve at the bus stop. As he makes his way through, he moves up another position. He moves up into P4 in the GT3 AM class, and that is P16 overall as he makes his way down and around. But meanwhile, we look from him to a little further up the road. Once again, we look back to that battle between Lucas Romano and Dirt Bounce at P4 in the GT3 Pros, and well, there has been no change between these two so far. But what I can tell you is that whilst this all has been going on, it is the case that Paul Scott has been in the pit lane here, and as he makes his way out of the pit lane, Paul Scott is your race leader now, your overall leader by a margin. Well, he's got quite an advantage. It is a margin of just shy of 10 seconds from Sam Holman, who pitted earlier on in the race, and it is the case that Sam Holman pitted a bit earlier than Paul Scott, but Paul Scott right now is in a world of of his own and running away with the proceedings. And it's looking very good for Paul Scott up the road. And Sam Holman, the man we're looking at, will need to find a way to try and come back in. As we see Holman there flashing his lights, trying to give the early warning to Jeremy DeBova that he is going to be coming on through in short order as they make their way through the bus stop here. As they come on down, Mark Sykes looking for the move on Elwin Sykes, and Elwin Sykes into the pits, in fact. And it's the case Mark Sykes will just take that place naturally as we do look to Sykes here. And Lorenzo Galtieri is also into the pits, and we can see coming in, I think we could be looking for the LMPs in particular. We could be looking at a two-stop racing. I think some of our GT3 drivers may be considering that second stop because the pit stops are coming in very early here. Although I say that, Sean Scudder, our overall GT3 leader in P7 overall and our GT3 Pro class leader, he's quite comfy running at the moment, albeit he does have a Jeremy DeBova attacking him very soon. 1.3 seconds behind is the Belgian, as we can see here. The changed by DB1 driver chasing after the RTA blue drivers, and between the two of them is Tristan Dinabrega, and also Michael Price has just managed to find his way through as they make the way in towards turn number 11. But as Price comes on through there, chasing after Sam Holman, who's 4 seconds up the road from him. Jeremy DeBova here goes to the inside. Now, is this a pit stop? I think it is. In fact, both of them in. So Sean Scudder and also Jeremy DeBova are both into the pits here. So it will be about who has the fastest pit stop in terms of who gains or loses. Now, what about Peter Lemkins? Lemkins is in as well. What about Dirt Bounce? Dirt Bounce stays out. Matthew Prouting out. No, not Matthew Prouting, my apologies. Peter Lemkins comes on in. So it is the case that right now we are seeing Dirt Bounce take the overall lead of the GT3 Pros, and well, our overall GT3 leader is Andrew Withers here, the GT3 AM driver, as he makes his way on around. We've got more pit stops coming up. We've got Navarro DeBova also in. We've also got DD Laming here. What about James Slates? Will he be coming in? I think if he is going to be coming in here, they're going to be sticking a lot of fuel in the car, these GT3 drivers, as they make their own front. James Slates is here to the pits, as is Mark Sykes here, as they all come in. Mark Sykes, remember, has got to do a lot of repair work to the car that incident earlier, but Jeremy DeBova here gets the jump on everybody around him. In fact, he's got ahead of Sean Scudder, who came in ahead of him and is now going to come out behind him. So Jeremy DeBova has jumped Sean Scudder, and I do believe that will mean that when Dirt Bounce and Andrew Withers pit, Jeremy DeBova will now be your GT3 overall and GT3 Pro leader as they make the way on out. How else does it play out? Well, there's Matthew Prouting. He's got ahead of Scudder as well, and Scudder, meanwhile, is now making his way up the S's, and that shows you the difference in pit stops as they make the way on through. What about Peter Lemkins? Well, he's not too far behind, but this is going to be a little bit of a shock to the system for Scudder, who was probably hoping that he'd be at the head of the pack when he came out of the pits, because he was leading it when he came on in. As they make the way on the through and round right now, you can see a little bit further back here, Navarro DeBova, well, he's closed up behind what is Lambert Wedder. And to be fair, whilst these two are not in the same class as the GT3s, with Navarro DeBova in the AMs, whereas Wedder in the Pros, it is the case that I think Navarro DeBova will take some inspiration from this as he makes his way around, and he needs to nail these laps because his target is to beat this man, Andrew Withers, who comes into the pits, does the privateer now, and as he makes his way on in here, he parks it up. It is the case that Withers, he brings the car on in. Well, I think Withers here, it is one of those situations whereby as he makes his way in, well, will he be able to hold on to that position versus Navarro DeBova? We will wait and find out. But meanwhile, Jeremy DeBova flying on through, and well, with Withers into the pits and Dirt Bounce into the pits here, it's all going to be time to see if it all changes as they make the way on through. Jeremy DeBova coming through the left-hander here at turn number 11. That's Chris Keenan into what I believe is the wall. Yeah, that is Chris Keenan into the wall there. And Jeremy DeBova having to just graze the wall. Coming out of 12 there on that awkward line. But as he comes across that timeline, it will be Jeremy DeBova, who is now your leader in the GT3 class overall and the GT3 Pros. But behind him, thanks to that little moment coming through turns 11 through to 12, Matthew Prouting is all over the back of Jeremy DeBova now, and we still have 31 minutes of racing plus the final lap to go. I think this could be Matthew Prouting days in the sun as he makes his way down the back knee straight here. They go toe to toe as they make their way towards the bus stop. It's Prouting on the outside, DeBova on the inside as they go into the right hander of the complex, and as they flow on through, Jeremy DeBova holds firm here, but Prouting looking very, very feisty here. He loves this. He loves being on the attack. He loves going for the lead. And as they make the way down out of turn 6 and up towards 7 here, into the boot they go. It is the case that Matthew Prouting inching ever closer. And I can tell you in the GT3 AM class that after the pit stops, Navarro de Bova is now your GT3 AM leader, 15.1 seconds ahead of Kurt Van Hoenacker right now. And I think the young de Bova is doing very well. But his father right now, by comparison, as we ride on board the gearbox of his father's machine, I think Jeremy here is going to be feeling the pressure as they make the way down the back straight and head up towards turn number 9. Now will Prouting go for it? No, he lifts off under braking this time, and he gets very close on corner exit there. And I think Matthew Prouting is sizing up that move. I think it's going to be a when, not if he can go for a move. And it's up to de Bova to defend it for his life as they make the way out to turn 10 and head up towards 11. As they front through the left-hander here, it is one of the situations whereby a little bit further up the road, I can tell you that Baz Beecham has just passed Mark Baker in the battle for P5 in the LMP2 class. As Beecham comes on through, I think Mark Baker's actually had a bit of a moment off circuit. In fact, he's gone off turn number 11 there and bringing the car back up to speed now. I think Baker's coming into the pit. No, he's just bringing it back up to speed as he exits turn 12. You can see the flashing lights there of Dirt Bounce, who will be feeding it. Well, if you can't go fast in that car, can you get out of my way, please? But Mark Baker's now back up to speed with confidence as he flows on through the right-hander. But we look back up to Prouting here, who are looking for that move as they make their way round through turn number 4, and Prouting again on the outside, but this time he's getting his nose alongside earlier. And as they come on through, will Prouting find a way through? No, he doesn't. He does the exact same as last time, which is to back off and wait for that opportunity. And I think this is wise from Prouting, particularly with Paul Scott coming up behind. And in terms of the LMP train coming on through, they've got quite a few more LMPs to come yet. And we'll have to wait and see. As meanwhile, what I believe, Peter Lemkins has just found a way past Sean Scooter. And in fact, well, Scooter's going very slowly indeed. I think that might have been a mistake from the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, either at the bus stop chicane alternatively and the outer loop. But it is one of those cases whereby Scooter has lost the place to Peter Lemkins, who now is going to try and run away with the story. He's going to try and run away with P3 and go hunting after the top 2 in the GT3 Pro class. But meanwhile, as we look at Scooter to a bit further down the order, we can see Lucas Romano here chasing down Dirt Bounce. And look at this, oh goodness, we do have that, I believe. That is, in fact, that's Paul Williams. He's not retired. My apologies, Paul Williams is back out on circuit. They've managed to get the car repaired, but it is the case that ahead of him, that is Michael Price, P3 in the LMP class, and Lucas Romano here as they make the way through the left-hander at turn number 10. Well, it is one of the situations where Romano trying to find a way past Bounce. Can he find it? That is the question. I don't think so this time around, but it is looking very, very appetising for Lucas Romano right now as they come through the right-hander at 12. And well, I just had it whispered in my ear with regards to Paul Williams. They had to take multiple laps. They had to take a lot of time to get the car repaired, but they've got it back out. So Paul Williams is running this race, P7, P26 overall, and it's good to see the Team Tetra Rouge LMP machines back out on circuit. Both Williams and Mark Baker, they've both been in difficult races. But indeed, a good point there, Stefan Rasmussen in the YouTube chat. There's members of the de Bova family, P1 in both the Pro and AM classes of the GT3s. You do love to see it, but the thing is now what you don't love to see, if you are there, fans, is this man here, Clips Racing's Matthew Prouting, the privateer, on the offensive charge, trying to find a way to upset that as they make their way down and around. And well, I think we would love to hear it would be a fairy tale story for a father-son win in the classes, but we'll have to wait and find out if it is going to happen. As Gus Franken comes into the pits, I spy out my commentary box window, and I believe that is a scheduled stop for Gus Franken. As we can see here, it is the case that Holman are coming on through with Baker in the LMP machinery. Baker, of course, flat down on Holman, and Matthew Prouting giving them the space and time of day. As we can see there, Jeremy de Bova just a little bit boxed in under braking, and that as a result has cost him a bit of time as he brings himself back up to speed here. And that's what Matthew Prouting will want. He will want to see de Bova get boxed in with the LMPs, and that gives him an opportunity. Anything that could trigger a little mistake or a suboptimal line can just help out in the long run. Now as they make the way through at the left into right here, it is the case that as they come on through the right hander, Jeremy de Bova here feeling that pressure. He's got a long way to go. It's still 26 minutes, and we've got this battle for the lead that could go on for the rest of the race, and we'd absolutely love it to as they make their way down to turn 1. But you can see there Price getting his nose chopped off a little bit there. Matthew Prouting, I don't think seeing Price until the last moment, but then he does give Price the space as they make the way up through the S's. De Bova does the same here. De Bova loses less compared to Prouting as they come rolling on through, and there's Paul Williams as well as Prouting gives Williams the space on the inside. They come roaring on through and up towards turn number 5, up towards the bus stop. Meanwhile, as they make their way up to the bus stop, we see by comparison Lucas Romano here is making his way in hot pursuit through the S's versus Dirt Bounce once again. And Sean Scooter comes into the pit lane for a second time in quick succession. And I do wonder whether there's a problem with Sean Scooter's car, because he was going very slowly after he was passed by Peter Lemkins. It just didn't look the same car. And as they make their way through the bus stop, Romano and Bounce, it is the case of the two of them very equal at this point in time. Mercedes in front of the BMW as Romano goes a little bit wide there. That's to bring the car back onto the circuit, and he continues to push on as they roll down and around. And meanwhile, I'm hearing that James Slates has had another moment at turn number 11. He's bringing the car into the pit lane here, and the Audi R8 in the hands of the RP Motorsports Pro-Am driver. Just not having a good day at the office whatsoever today, and well, it has not been one for him to remember. As meanwhile, Lucas Romano here, the closest he's ever been to Dirt Bounce. He looks up the inside into turn, it's turn number 9. He gets the move, or does he, as they make their way through the corner, and as they come up the hill now in towards turn number 10, it is the case Lucas Romano has got it done. He had to really go for it into turn number 9, but he's finally found a way past Dirt Bounce, and I think this is what he needed to now go hunting after Peter Lemkins, Matthew Prouton and Jeremy DeBova, who, well, Peter Lemkins 8.2 seconds up the road, but Lemkins is flying right now. He is the fastest of any GT3 on the circuit, is this man who we're looking at. He is on a mission to win, and well, at this pace, with a 4.5 second gap to Matthew Prouting and Jeremy DeBova only literally 6/10 of the road up from him, it is the case that Peter Lemkins within the next couple of laps could really close it down. In fact, within the next 10 laps, he will be all over the back of Prouton and DeBova, if not sooner, as he makes his way down towards the bus stop chicane once again. But as he comes charging through, we say hello to Katie Eames in the Facebook chat there, who made the mention about wonder if we'll get a father and son win in Pro-Am. We'll have to wait and see whether the DeBova family can take both wins in this feature. But in the meantime, well, we can only dream of that happening. But of course, we're not allowed to pick favourites here in the commentary box. We treat everybody equally, as I try to make the way around. And Peter Lemkins right now, well, if he can make this 2 wins out of 2 today, it will be a sensational achievement for the RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver as he makes his way through the right-hander. And as he comes charging through, we say hello to P Scott, or Paul Scott, in the YouTube chat as well. Good evening to you, sir. As we see Matthew Prouting here, meanwhile, still giving that pursuit of Jeremy DeBova as they make the way into the left-hander of turn number 10. Now, as they roll on through here, one of the situations I think for is Matthew Prouting. He's been this close before. He's been there very regularly. He's got to find a way to simply put that pressure on. But Jeremy DeBova, we know if anybody is able to handle pressure, and we saw it in the GT3 Season 1. We saw it in GT3 Season 2. It's the case that Jeremy DeBova just has a way of being absolutely infallible when the pressure comes, and that's what Matthew Prouting's got to work his way through. Meanwhile, we look from them for a brief moment up towards what is the LMP2s, and in particular Baz Meacham, who are currently in P5 after that spin on what was the opening laps, the spin at the bus stop chicane. He's got himself back up here with the LMPs and is now the best part of 38.5 seconds off of Jack Wyborn, who in turn is 39 seconds off of Michael Price. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a quiet one in the LMPs, given the number of made mistakes and where they're recovering their races. But we'll wait and see as we're hearing Lambert Wedder into the pit lane once again. So I think Wedder has decided to come in for a second stop, unless I'm very much mistaken. And that may be just to do a quick bit of repair work on the car. But meanwhile, we look from Baz Meacham to Paul Scott, who is our overall leader and our leader in the LMP2 class. And well, Scott right now in control of this race, and I think absolutely flying high. 13.6 seconds is an advantage over Sam Holman. And well, where is Sam Holman? He's only just coming to the end of the current lap, where Paul Scott's already going through the S's, and that shows you the delta that Sam Holman is having to operate to. And in terms of lap time, well, that last lap from Paul Scott at 33.2, Sam Holman at 33.8. That tells you the story, whereby Paul Scott is absolutely flying by comparison as they make the way on around. And to be fair, he may be a long way down, but he is flying. And Baz Meacham at 33.4 that last lap. Do not count him out yet. If there is a sudden safety car for whatever reason, I think Meacham could be an opportunity of really closing on up, but we'll have to wait and see. As meanwhile, it's Andrew Withers battling here with Tristan Di Brega as they make their way down from 6 into 7, and Withers on the outside here, and as he has to give the space to one, he has to give the space to a second, and that is Lambert Wedder who takes the double move as they make their way in towards turn number 8 here, and Tristan Di Brega making a critical pass to try and get this race back under control, as he is currently in P4 in class, in the GT3 AM class, and we'll be hoping that he can close down Kurt Van Hoenacker in the 20 minutes remaining. It's a 12-second gap to close down, but on that last lap, to be fair, a 44.0, and well, Kurt Van Hoenacker by comparison at 45.7. 1.7 seconds was the difference, albeit I think it may be the case that Kurt Van Hoenacker did not have a perfect lap, and as a result, he may not be closed down as rapidly as that data would suggest, as we continue to watch Di Brega making his way through the final corner and on to another lap. Now, meanwhile, I can tell you that Sean Scooter is into the pits once again, and Scooter having a very difficult day at the office. It is the case that he is down in P at 25. That is P9 in the GT3 Pros. But Di Brega this time around, well, he set a 47.3, and I think that may be from the overtaking he had to do. So as a result, he's lost time to the drivers ahead. But we'll wait and see. As we can see him flashing his lights here to Lambert Wedder, I would presume, to try and get the message through to the Dutchman. Please don't overtake me. There's no need. I wonder if Wedder's going to oblige, or whether it's going to be the case that Wedder has other ideas here. And I think he's got other ideas as he looks to go outside to inside, but in the end, Di Brega cuts him off there and covers him off very nicely. And in fact, they stay as they were. But speaking of people staying as they were, we do look up to the battle for the overall lead of the GT3s, and we can see that Jeremy DeBoer is still holding onto that advantage of what is 7/10 of a second here. Nothing much is changing between these two, but I do wonder whether Matthew Prouting is simply backing things off and saving some fuel for much later in the race, as we do see there Jack Wyborn coming down the inside of Jeremy DeBoer, the LMP driver in P4 in the LMP class, simply coming on that inside line, and as a result, Jeremy DeBoer will lose a little bit of time because of that as they make their way up through the S's. And could this be the opportunity that Matthew Prouting has been looking for, as Andrew Withers has jumped to the pits for an off-track, I believe, there's damage to the car, but we can see here Jeremy DeBoer having to go defensive as they come into the bus stop. He holds it again. No pressure as Tristan Di Brega has gone off circuit and had to jump to the pits as well. So we've had two more cars jump to the pits, and meanwhile we continue to watch this battle for the overall GT3 lead as Matthew Prouting taps the wall there, going wide out of turn number 6, carrying too much speed, and also I think a little bit of dirty air off of the back of Jeremy DeBoer's Mercedes just contributed to some understeer coming downhill. And Matthew Prouting, now there was a brief tap with the wall from what we could see. That may just be the difference, because Matthew Prouting, of course, if he needs to get that damage repaired, he'll have to come into the pits, and that will cost him a sizable amount of time. But whilst all this is going on, I can tell you that whilst Jeremy DeBoer and Matthew Prouting are both lapping in the 44.3s and 44.2s respectively, this man here, Peter Lemkins, is lapping in the 43.8, and he is closing that gap. Remember, we last cut to him, it was a 5-second gap. Now it's a 1.7 second gap. Peter Lemkins can smell blood in the water. He can smell a double win up on the grabs here, up on the cards. Will he be able to get it? He has got 17 minutes to close up 2 seconds. He'll do that comfortably, I think, and then take the fight for the overall GT3 win as he makes his way through the right-hander. Meanwhile, into the pits comes Michael Price from what was P3 at the time in the LMPs. They've got him up on the jacks. That means he's having the tyres changed, and Jack Wyborn goes up into P3 as a result. I think some of the LMP drivers here feeling that pinch on the tyres, feeling that concern with the fuel as they make the way on around. Every one of our LMP drivers has now made a pit stop. Michael Price has made 2 pit stops, in fact, as he comes out of the pits after that tyre change. And Jack Wyborn here, well, as he comes roaring on through, how long will it be before he potentially has to pit again, or will he be able to hold on to that P3 until the very end? We'll have to wait and see. But Peter Lemkins now well within a second of Matthew Prouting, and his chase is now turning into a battle for P2 in the GT3 Pro class. As he makes his way down through turn 6 and into 7 here, where can Lemkins go for it? In terms of sector times, the sectors where he's stronger by comparison is sector 3 in particular. So sector 3, in terms to give you an idea where sector 3 is in terms of the track, sector 3 is in the run out of what would be turn 7 down towards, well, in fact it's not turn 7. Yes, it is. It's the run down from turn 7 all the way down to turn 8 up to 9. So that's where Lemkins is stronger. To be fair, as he comes into 9, you can see how much stronger he is as he really closes up. We ride on board here with the Ferrari driver. as he makes his way into the left-hander of turn number 10. And Will Lemkins is getting it all done over the course of the lap, but particularly in sector 3. That is where he's so much stronger compared to the BMW in front of him and Matthew Prouting. As he comes for 11 and up into 12 here, still 15.5 minutes to go. This will buy Jeremy DeBover a little bit of breathing room. Jeremy DeBover now actually 2.1 seconds up the road from Matthew Prouting, and Prouting now having to look more towards his rear than looking ahead of him, and you can see it even under braking into turn 1 just how much Lemkins close up as Matthew Prouting makes a mistake there. He takes too much apex curve, it sends the BMW wide, and this is the excuse that Lemkins will look for to go for the move. Now he's getting very close very early on, but he has to back off there. He's way too close in the run through the S's, but Prouting pulls to the outside here. As we look to the picture, we can see that's Price trying to come through the middle of the turn. The LMP driver is going to Moses his way move, and as they make the way into the right-hander here, it's Lemkins who gets the move done, and Matthew Prouting gets it all out of sorts coming through the bus stop, and my goodness, well, that could have been absolutely hairy for all three drivers, but in the end, well, I think Price will be breathing a sigh of relief that he pulled that off the way he did. In terms of passing the two GT3s, and I think Peter Lemkins will be saying right now, good on you, Price, you gave me the space to take the move, albeit that could have been very different, and Lemkins is up into P2 in the GT3 Pro class of GT3s overall. That's P8 overall with the LMPs factored in, but Lemkins now with a 2.2 second gap to close down to Jeremy DeBover. It's not far to go. We've only got 14 minutes to go. Can Lemkins close down Jeremy DeBover, or will it be the case that it's going to be the father of the DeBover family who takes the Pro win and the son who takes the win in the AMs? We'll find out, but my goodness, this is going to come down to a great finale, as meanwhile into the pits is Jack Wyborn. He's pitted from P3, and that will mean as he comes on in, where is Michael Price? Well, Price is going to retake P3 in class. And to be fair, with Price taking that fresh set of tyres, I think this might have been a gamble that is working out for Price, because he's absolutely belting around the circuit now like nobody's business, and he comes charging up through the S's once again here, and that change of tyres I think has given him a little bit of inspiration, as Baz Beecham also comes on through and passes Jack Wyborn. So Baz Beecham, well, he was all the way down the bottom of the order come the opening laps, now he's found himself back up into P4 in class and overall, and it's looking good for Beecham on his debut with NXTGEN as he makes his way through turns 2 and 3, does the BRM driver, and heads up towards the bus stop chicane. You see Matthew Prouting there literally languishing, and I think at this point Prouting may be thinking about just backing it off and taking it easy, because he does have a 7.7 second gap he can play with to Lucas Romano further behind as they make the way down and around. It is a situation whereby Paul Williams now gradually bringing himself back up a lap. He's now only 2 laps down of the leaders as he makes his way on around the circuit. But as we continue to look around right now, it is the case that in terms of Jeremy DeBover, well, here is Jeremy DeBover, and behind him now only 7/10 of a second, and closing at such a rapid rate of knots. That last lap, he almost took a second out of Jeremy DeBover. It's Peter Lemkins, that you can see here as Baz Beecham comes through up the inside behind Jeremy DeBover. There is Peter Lemkins. We ride on board the gearbox here of Jeremy DeBover as he makes his way up the hill. We ride on board looking backwards from the Mercedes as they make the way through turn number 10. And the difference here will be that the Ferrari is going to need to have all the strength in the corners. It's not as fast as the Mercedes on the straights by default, unless it's very tight into that slipstream. And as they make the way through turn number 12, that's what DeBover is going to be wary of. He'll be wary of the fact that the Ferrari will catch him through the corners very aggressively as they make the way across the timeline. They go on to what for them is lap number 28. And as they come into turn 1, you can see already that the challenge driver, how much of a gap he holds in straight line acceleration. As he makes his way out of turn 1, it wasn't the best of turn 1s. The gap is 3/10, so they make the way into the S's, but there is Jack Wyborn who comes on through here. Jerry DeBover has to hold a little bit of a wide line there through the S's, and in return, could this be the opportunity that would be required for Peter Lemkins? He's going to look for it. Jerry DeBover comes off the inside very sternly as they make the way into the chicane, and Lemkins all over the back of DeBover, but there's no change this time. DeBover knows where to put the car as they make the way through the bus stop, down through turn number 6. They go through the outer loop corner, and as they roll on down, you can see in front of them, that's Elwyn Sykes in the McLaren, who's got the blue flags waving. He'll stay wide here to give them both the space to come on through, and as they make the way through, a little bit of grass there taken by DeBover. He's feeling the pressure as he takes a bit too much apex, and as they make the way down into turn number 8, rolling on through the right-hander, uphill they go Now, will Lemkins go for a cutback? He's thinking about it, but Dallara covers him off very nicely here. This is the closest battle on circuit. We're going to stay with it as Dallara pulls to the right here. He blocks off Peter Lemkins in trying to go up the inside. Lemkins has got the overspeed here. He's going to try and go around the outside into turn number 9, and Dallara on the inside there, and I think that is Peter Lemkins who is through. Lemkins is up into the lead of the GT3s as they make their way through turn number 10, and in the end it was all about being daring to go around the outside, and he's got it done, and now he's got to try and break away. And I think Dallara at this point may be thinking about the run up through the S's to the bus stop chicane, where that Mercedes is going to absolutely fly by comparison. But as they make their way onto another lap here, in fact Dallara is being dropped on the straights, and I wonder whether there is a fuel saving aspect here that we don't know about, because Dallara did jump a lot of ground when he took that pit stop. He was in the pits a much shorter period compared to his peers around him, including Peter Lemkins and also Matthew Prouty, and perhaps that is why he, as he makes his way now through the S's, he's dropping away because he hasn't quite got the fuel to simply attack. We'll wait and find out at the very end, but even so, a P2 for Jeremy Dallara. I don't think he'll be complaining about that one too much as they make their way through the bus stop. But Peter Lemkins is just flying off into the distance right now. The gap is already up to 1 second, almost 1.1 seconds, and they haven't even completed half the lap. But as they make their way around, meanwhile we look from the head of the Dallara family to the younger member, the son Navarro Dallara here, them changed by DB2 driver, and he's currently still leading the GT3 AM class by 2.5 seconds. But he does have Lorenzo Gutteri here, who is closing very rapidly. Gutteri, that last lap was 1.3 seconds faster compared to Navarro Dallara. Well, whatever we have to say about Lorenzo Gutteri, one of the things we do have to say, a very positive thing, is he is absolutely flying the Racing Team Astra Orange driver here as he makes his way down through turn number 6, and as he comes charged on through here, it does look as though he is going to be in the attacking zone within the next lap or so versus Navarro Dallara. Given the fact that Dallara 1.3 seconds slower on the previous lap, you would imagine that attack is coming on the next lap. As they make the way on around right now, Gutteri, of course, a new face within the next-gen racing community as he makes his way out to turn number 9, turn number 8 and up in towards 9. And for a number of drivers, some of the more established drivers here, of course, new faces means new quandaries, drivers that you have to figure out. And Gutteri, definitely one of those drivers who is showing a huge amount of potential as he makes his way up the hill here. Kurt van Hoornacker in P3 in the GT3 AM class. He's 23 seconds behind by comparison as they make the way on through here. 8 minutes to go plus that final lap, and right now, whilst most of the field is spread out, this is the closest battle that is building up, and it's not too long, we believe, until this battle erupts onto our screens. As meanwhile, I am hearing that Gus Franken has jumped to the pit for an incident. I'm not sure where it is that Gus Franken has had a major moment, and he's into the pit lane for repair work, much like Tristan Di Nobrega, who is still being repaired here as the car is sat stationary, and Sean Scudder also under repair work. In this case, a lot of drivers have been in the wars today, and well, it has not gone the way of many, but for some it has gone very well indeed. And can Navarro Dallara hold on with less than 8 minutes to go here to bring home a win in this series, or will it be the case that we are going to see a double win for one Lorenzo Gutteri in the GT3 AM class? Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. I think if anyone's going to be able to hold off Gutteri, it will be Dallara. He'll know where to defend, or will he just focus on bringing home that P2? Either option is valid this early on in the season as he makes his way down towards turn number 7. Meanwhile, I can tell you in the LMP2 class, it's Paul Scott still leading, but meanwhile Jack Wyborn is hunting after Baz Meacham, albeit it is the case that Meacham faster by 3/10 on that previous lap and continuing to put in absolutely brilliant laps. Meanwhile, further up the road, Michael Price, really the fastest of the LMP drivers, a 33.2 that last lap, absolutely charging, but he is on fresh tyres, and he is the best part of 1 minute and 2 seconds down on second place man Sam Holman, who has not taken the tyre change, and that's the difference. But meanwhile, Lorenzo Gutteri here, we look back to that battle for the GT3 AM lead as we ride on board with the Lamborghini Huracan driver as he makes his way out of the corner and comes charging down towards turn number 11. As he rolls through the left-hander, can we see anything particular? There's enabling to close up in rapid fashion. He rolls on through the right-hander, and well, in terms of the sector times, the sectors in fact quite equal the main sector where the difference is sector 1. So it's these opening corners as they make their way down into turn 1 here. And you can see under braking just how much Gualtieri is closing up as he uses the full runoff area there and then some, brings the car back on circuit, and as he does so here now, he will have that overspeed as he makes his way up the hill in the slipstream of Navarro de Bova. De Bova, aware of the fact that he's got a Lamborghini fast approach him, where will he defend? Will he defend to the inside? Will he put it in the middle, or will he take the racing line? He's on the racing line. Gualtieri getting closer and closer and closer, but he can't find a way through. He's not close enough here to force the issue as they both make their way through the bus stop chicane, and they roll them through here, and Navarro de Bova holds on to fight another day through the bus stop. And now it's all about the trickier section of the circuit. It's all these flowing corners, all about getting on the power as soon as possible. As Sam Holman into the pits from P2 in the LMP class and overall. And well, could it be the case that Holman is going to drop behind Price? Well, we'll have to forget that thought for the moment. Gualtieri looking for that move there. He went to the outside, went to the inside, just faking these little moves, trying to get in the head of De Bova in front of him. But then he parks it behind once more. And you can see Navarro de Bova definitely under pressure as he goes defensive down the inside, heels back to the outside. Laurent Gualtieri looks down the inside. He goes for a late move on the brakes, and as they turn, and there's contact between the two of them, and Gualtieri is turned there, and Navarro de Bova carries on. And well, I think there's going to be a bit of a steward's inquiry with that one. And of course, with the damage that Navarro de Bova has picked up, will that make his race come a cropper as they make their way around? Well, it does look as though there is a bit of suspension damage on the front right. We'll have to wait and find out. Meanwhile, Lucas Romano has been catching Matthew Prouting gradually, and now he's finally here for the battle for P3 in the GT3 Pro class with less than 5 minutes to go as they make their way down the straight here towards the bus stop chicane, and Romano's going to try and go outside to inside, and he just creeps ahead there, and Prouting just does not have enough to hold off Romano as they make their way through the corner, as they roll on downhill through the right-hander through turn number 6. It is the case that Lucas Romano is now up into P3 overall in the GT3 class and in the GT3 Pros as they make their way down through the second half of the circuit. As they make their way down the hill, I can tell you with everything that's going on, as we see Paul Williams here. Oh, goodness me, Paul Williams taking Lucas Romano with him to the tyre barrier there. And well, that is a very unfortunate moment there. I think it was a bit of a misinterpretation from both drivers, and Romano up at his nose. He will be back to racing, but after making that move, he's lost places to Prouting, to bounce from Malami. He's all the way down to P16, and that is not the way he would have wanted it to go. And as a result, I think just some tired legs there and tired eyes led to that incident. But meanwhile, we can see that Jeff Slade here has found his way past Elwin Sykes for what is P17 overall. That's P5 in the GT3 AMs as he makes his way down into turn number 9 here. And can he keep what is Elwin Sykes behind him? I think he can. I think Elwin Sykes will playing for points, then looking to try and come back at any point. But meanwhile, at the head of the GT3 AMs, it is still Navarro de Bova here, who is gradually coming up behind the likes of Elwin Sykes. And in terms of his advantage, well, after that contact between him and Gualtieri, he now has an advantage of somewhere in the region of about, we're estimating 7.6 to 7.7 seconds. But I think there is going to be a little bit of a steward's inquiry hanging over Navarro de Bova with regards to that contact at turn 9 on the previous lap. Now, say of it what you will, of course, some of you may be wanting to put your thoughts in the chat, and you're welcome to do so. I do think that Navarro de Bova may have just turned in a little bit to Gualtieri, because Gualtieri did have that inside line, but again, we only saw the one camera angle, which was the outside camera angle, so we don't know if Gualtieri came in a little bit too hot, for example, as de Bova tried to turn in, or vice versa, and that's what the stewards will be looking at. But right now, of course, it's nasty when you're still leading in class, but you know there's an incident hanging over your head, you know there's likely to be a steward's inquiry hanging over your head following the race, and that could lead to you seeing your win taken away from you. If so, at least a time penalty, and depending on how long that time penalty is for, that could lead to your win being taken away. But right now, we won't be worrying about that, and I'm sure young Navarro won't be worrying about that either, because meanwhile, Lucas Romano making his hunt for DDD Valament here. He's looking to try and get back the P5 after that incident with Paul Williams only moments ago at the corner they've just come out of. Whereby Paul Williams seems to come in a little bit hot on the inside and take the both of them to the outside wall. But as Lucas Romano here makes his way through the right-hander, and again that'll be investigated by the stewards. We're not going to cut it one way or the other, but we can see at Lucas Romano as he comes through the left-hander here of turn at number 10. It is one of those cases where DDD Valament will be feeling that pressure from the RP Motorsport AM driver, sorry, Pro-Am driver I should say, as they make the way on through. Less than 2 minutes to go. Most drivers now going on to the final lap. The overall leader of this race, Paul Scott, we can see coming through the camera shot behind. He will now be going on to his final tour of the circuit, going on to what will be his 38th and final lap here. And well, it has been absolutely flawless from Paul Scott in this race as they made their way into the opening corner. And there you see DDD Vlamic just getting caught a little bit by surprise by the fact that he does have what is Paul Scott covered through, but in the end he gave the space at the last moment. That will not help his racing line as they make the way up through the S's here, and that will give an advantage to what is Lucas Romano to look for the move as they come charging down towards the bus stop. Now, will there be the space to go for it? That is the big question. He's not close enough, and that just shows you the raw grunt of that Mercedes engine as they make the way through. The BMW stronger through the corners by comparison, but it just does not have that straight line speed that the Mercedes has as they make the way through. But hold up a second. Oh, what's this? Matthew Prouting is, oh, goodness me, and Dirt Bounce had to take evasive action there. And the last spot's one along with Paul Scott. And Matthew Prouting has got it wrong coming out of turn 7, and he loses all these places all the way down to P6. It's last minute drama for Matthew Prouting, and that's not the way he would have wanted things to go as they make the way around, and that's going to be very close to the very end here. As we can see, it is the case that Vlamic here under pressure from Lucas Romano into turn number 9, and Romano, well, he's going to look for the cutback here as they exit out the corner, but I think Vlamic has just done enough to go defensive into 10, but we do have to cut away from both of them, ladies and gentlemen, because right now as he makes his way into the penultimate corner, it is Paul Scott who has led this one for the majority of the race, and as he comes out the final corner, he will take the win in the overall and in the LMP2 AM class here in the feature race at Watkins Glen International. A fantastic drive from Paul Scott, and meanwhile, as they all make their way through to complete the race, Bounce held off, well, Bounce got ahead of Vlamic in the end, and Vlamic held off Lucas Romano, but as they all come charging on through, let's try and find Peter Lemkins. Well, there is Lemkins. What about Navarro de Bova? Well, he's going to come across the line, the winner in the GT3 AM class, but of course he will have that Stewards investigation hanging over him, but Navarro de Bova takes the win in the GT3 AMs ahead of Lorenzo Gualtieri, who, as you see him coming across the line here, will be fuming at the contact between the two of them, I suspect, and it will be Kurt Van Hoornacker who will come home at 3rd place on the podium for the GT3 AMs as he comes on through. As he rolls them through the corners here, Kurt Van Hoornacker, a solid drive for them, challenged by DB2 driver. As he makes his way across that line, he'll be very pleased with how this one has played out. And behind him in the rear of the camera shot, you can see coming home P2 overall and P2 in the LMP2 class. A fantastic drive from Hollerton Races, Sam Holman there, nailing it very nicely. And behind him will be Michael Price in short order, who will round off the overall podium. And of course, the LMP2 podium as he comes on through for Excite Racing. A strong race for Michael Price. He'll be wondering what happened with regards to the tyres, but we'll wait and see as he comes across that line. I think he's got a lot of data to play with today. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, your winner in the GT3 Pro class. It is Peter Lemkins from RP Motorsport Pro Am from Belgium. A fantastic drive, back-to-back wins. He finishes taking the win ahead of Jeremy DeBova, P2 today in the GT3 Pros of the feature race. He'll be pleased with that, there's no doubt about that. And then Dirt Bounce finishing in P3 in the GT3 Pros, a lap down in the end, not on the pace of DeBova or Lemkins, but still a solid drive from the RP Motorsport senior driver as he comes across the line here, having run out of fuel. And my goodness, what a fantastic race from start to finish, ladies and gentlemen. And here are the results on the left-hand side of your screen very shortly as we show them. And you can see there, Paul Scott in the end taking the win in the LMP AM class ahead of Sam Holman and what was Michael Price. And it was Baz Meacham and Jack Wyborn completing their top 5 ahead of Mark Baker, Paul Williams, Jonathan Collins and Stefan Vessels. Jonathan Collins and Stefan Vessels retiring. Peter Lemkins taking the win in the end in the GT3 Pros ahead of Jeremy DeBova and Dirt Bounce, with DD Vlamic and Lucas Romano completing the top 5 there. Matthew Prouting, Gus Franken, Lamet Wedder and Sean Scudder completing their order. And then in the GT3 AM class, not to be forgotten about, Navarro de Bova taking the win out on circuit. But of course, we will see what happens with regards to that incident. Some would call it a racing incident, others may want to disagree about that. And it was a Gualtieri in P2, Kurt Van Hoornacker P3, Mark Sykes P4, and then James Slates P5, with Elwin Sykes, Davide Favo, Chris Keenan, Tristan Di Narega, Andrew Withers and Mark Arrowsmith completing their order as well. And with that, we'll be back in approximately 5 minutes' time for the post-race interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and ready for our post-round interviews with our 4 selected drivers for the IMB Racewear Lobby. Of course, Lobby 2 brought to you in collaboration with IMB Racewear. And we'll be kicking off with the 511 driver of Baz Meacham very shortly, the LMP AM driver. Let's bring him in to the interview room. And indeed, it's going to be quite an interesting insight from Baz Meacham because I believe this is his first experience of an iRacing League race event. And it'll be interesting to hear from him, so let's bring him on in. Good evening, Baz. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Paul, how are you doing?
All good, thank you. All good, thank you, Baz. But more importantly, how are you doing? And how do you feel your race went today, or your race, I should say? Given the fact I believe this is your first experience of an iRacing League event.
Yeah, I thought it went pretty well. I wasn't expecting to do too good because pre-season I was a few seconds off the pace, even of the back of the field. But I got practicing pretty hard through the week leading up to the race, doing a few multi-class events in the IMSA series, and yeah, sort of pulled it through. I did my quickest ever lap of the Glen in quali, 32.3, I think it was. Had a few more tenths in there, I think, but I kept on coming up on other cars through the lap. So maybe next time. Sprint race went okay, finished fifth there, and then in the feature, I didn't realise until later on that a couple of guys had been in an accident and dropped out. I had a huge spin on lap one, all my own fault. I went into the bus stop in a crowd, didn't see the apex properly, clunked the curb and flung me off to the right. Then dropped to the back of the entire field before I rejoined to make sure it was safe. And then, yeah, I just battled on through from there. Got up to sort of third, fourth area. Went to pit. I must have missed the pit limit line by a couple of inches or something, and I was a couple of miles an hour over. Maybe I'm not entirely sure, but it was. It gave me a 30-second penalty for that. So I ended up in the pits for well over a minute, I think. By the time I come out, I think the lap after that I did was about 3 minutes. So lost a fair bit of time there, but still finished fourth. So I was pretty happy with how the sort of event went.
Oh, indeed, it sounds as though it was quite the fun event for yourself, but at the same time, a lot of learning experiences to go in there. I do have to ask, what made you pick the LMP machinery? Is that sort of you really enjoy the machinery, or was it sort of a new challenge as well for yourself?
Yeah, I just love LMP racing. I love multi-class racing, and I've never really raced LMP in a sim as such. I spent a year or so racing in ACC, so GT3 stuff, but on console before. I was lucky enough that my wife got me a PC with triple screens for Christmas, so I jumped into iRacing then in January, and as soon as the opportunity from NXTGEN came up to jump in the series, I wanted to get on it. So.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. Well, we're very grateful to have you racing it with us, and a big thank you on the side to your wife for, of course, buying you that present, which has enabled you to race with us. But coming back to your races today, of course, over the course of the races, we saw that your form continued to improve, and focusing specifically on the feature race, as you say, you had that moment at the bus stop chicane, waited to rejoin with all the field coming on through. But did that change your approach to the race at all, given the fact that you dropped so far away from the LMPs, but then you had to sort of fight your way back up past the GT3s and then rework the strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a case of head down, crack on, and hope for the best. I think was the main thing. And then I knew that from the qualifying and the previous race that I had reasonable enough pace to be sort of, I don't know, sort of third back to fourth, fifth, sixth sort of area. So I thought I was kind of aiming in that neck of the woods. I knew from the beginning I didn't have the pace to be bothering probably first or second. So without any major incidents anyway or anything. So yeah, I just thought I'd just get my head down, try and be as consistent as possible. Hope the pit stop goes well. Unfortunately, it didn't, and then crack on from there. Really.
Oh, indeed. Well, at the end of the day, whilst not everything worked out, it seems as though you had fun out there and you got some good points on the board and plenty to take to round 2 in a week's time, which is Road Atlanta. How are you feeling for the rather legendary American circuit?
Yeah, I mean, I've absolutely loved this event. It's been a great experience. I can't wait for the next event. I started practicing Road Atlanta. It's another track that I'd never really raced on. Some tricky blind corners going on there. I've got my time down quite a bit from where I started the other day already. So yeah, it should be an interesting one. Especially the S's going up that hill. With both classes is going to be yeah, quite interesting. But yeah, even through this event, through sort of 8, 9, 10 corners, I was trying to be as respectful as possible to the GT3 guys, just follow them through there and then do them down the straight rather than trying to send it up the inside and potentially causing us both incidents. So I'm going to try and plan to do the same sort of thing with Road Atlanta if I can.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on at Road Atlanta. But until then, congratulations on your results today. And thank you once again, Baz, for joining us in the interview room.
Thanks very much, Paul. No problem.
Alrighty, take care and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.
So hearing there from Baz Meacham, who sounded very positive with regards to his experience over the course of the races today. And I think the key thing we can take away from what Baz was saying there was the fact that a lot of learning went into tonight and over the course of the practice in the build-up to tonight as well. With the fact practice going in and then out on circuit today, putting in his best ever laps around Watkins Glen in the LMP machinery. And on top of that as well, when things didn't go right, whether it be in the sprint or alternatively in the feature with that major error at the bus stop chicane and having to bring it all back together and in the end reinvent the strategy and just get his head down and get on with the racing. And again, picked up that time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, but those are silly mistakes that can be ironed out. And it'll be interesting to see how Baz Meacham's performances improve over the course of the season, how that consistency arises, how the results continue to improve, because I'm sure he's got a lot of potential in there and he just needs the time to bring it out. But speaking of bringing somebody out, we'll now be bringing Arjen Kregel into the interview room. We'll be bringing him in very shortly. Let's just get him on in here. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. We'll hear from our GT3 AM driver. So we're just bringing Arjen Kregel in now. Hello, Arjen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Arjan, it looked as though it was a bit of a mixed day today. A P3 in the sprint, but a non-finish in the feature. How do you feel about your opening round?
Yeah, it was a difficult race at the feature race, but sprint is gave me a lot of confidence for the future race. But the confidence wasn't really, yeah, how do you say it? Confidence wasn't really at my point. Let me say that.
Oh, indeed, I could see where you're coming from, but just dialing things back to the start of the proceedings, qualifying went rather well for yourself in the end, qualifying quite high up there in the GT3 AM class. How did you feel your qualifying session went? Was there more time out there?
Oh, it wasn't more time out there, but I had a pace. I had a really stable pace for the sprint race. But what I said, I had enough confidence for the after the sprint race for the future race, but my confidence was very high, and I didn't mention that for the future race.
Well, to be fair, having some confidence and well, how that translates into the races, it's I've been there like yourself, having a bit too much confidence perhaps, but still plenty to learn from. And with the results that you did have in the sprint and also just the overall pace that you were showing in the feature before having to retire, how's it feeling with your choice of car this season? Because you're looking quite composed out there.
Yeah, I think last season I had the Audi R8. It wasn't. It was my car at the beginning and not at the end because I think it was very unstable. But I choose the Ferrari at this season, and I think that the car was very stable at the moment, and I think that's my car at the moment. So I'm very pleased with that.
Oh, well, that's a good thing. Of course, finding the right car for the job is always important, but the most important thing is a car that suits the driver. And
Yeah.
looking ahead to round 2 in a week's time, heading to Road Atlanta, of course, a circuit that we've been to previously in the GT3 Championship. How are you feeling for the legendary American circuit?
If I get the pace like I had on Watkins Glen, I hope to get P3, P4, P3, P2. So that's the pace I want to have, and that's the finish I want to have.
Oh, indeed. Well, fingers crossed for you in your preparations for Road Atlanta in a week's time. But until then, we wish you the best of luck. And thank you for joining us in the interview room once again. It may not have gone all your way today, but still a P3 in the sprint, something to be proud of.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul.
You have a lovely evening.
Same to you.
So hearing there from Arjen Kregel, who, as we could hear, was happy with how things went in qualifying and also the sprint with that third place. But in his own words, it just built a little bit too much confidence and carried that into the feature. And in the end, that's what led to his non-finish. But still, I think it's one of those things whereby, particularly with regards to the Ferrari that he's picked, the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, feeling good with the car as well. And that is a long way towards a championship campaign. If you've got the right car in your mind that suits your driving style, it can take you a long way. And it'll be interesting to see how Kregel continues to carry that momentum and perhaps tones down that confidence a little bit, or finds a sort of platform for that confidence at Road Atlanta, because it will be a very challenging circuit given the tight winding sections at Road Atlanta where there's not enough room to make perhaps very aggressive overtakes. But we will wait and see. But coming from Arjen Kregel to now what is our number 8 driver there, Michael Price, let's bring in our LMP AM driver in one brief moment. So just briefly bringing Michael Price in. Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. How are you?
All good, thank you, Michael. But more importantly, focusing on yourself. How are you and how do you feel your opening round in the Next Gen Racing Series went at Watkins Glen?
Well, I think in retrospect, taking second place and third place, I would take that every day of the week, to be fair. I had a slight incident on the second race when I was coming through the pack with one of the GT3 drivers. And I know that on the commentary you were like, why is he taking tires and stuff? That's because my steering angle was to 45 degrees. So my steering was like, you know what I mean? And I didn't know what to do. So I went into the pits and the tires were still on, mate. So that's the reason why I had the tires, which was a shame.
Oh, goodness me, I see. Thank you for clarifying that. But it's unfortunate there was that little incident, but still a lot to be positive about. And just taking things back to qualifying initially, really good qualifying session from yourself, although there was quite a delta to Vessels' pole lap, half a second in the end. Do you think qualifying saw you get the best out the car, or was there a bit more time out there?
To be fair, I think Stefan is pretty rapid, mate. So given the times that I was doing before in practice and everything else, I think my quality time reflected my true potential. Maybe a hundredth of a second here or there, but no, I don't think I was getting anywhere near him. And in fact, on the first lap, just before the bus stop, if you look at the chopper view, you'll see that Stefan had a problem. He was pulling over to the right-hand side. Now, if I decided to have slipstreamed him there and tried to overtake him, I knew that there was a potential for huge go wrong, carnage. So I decided not to, and I actually got onto the radio to Stefan to say, no, whatever you're doing, just get through there and let the race pan out, then we'll race. So, you know, in the context of everything, I'm glad I did that, because it could have been a really bad scene when we just started the race.
Oh, indeed. And in the sprint race in the end, after that, and when the laps started to settle down and the pace really came in, it looked as though you were quite in control in terms of your pace, managing the position, and it was quite a nice cruising away to second place. How, with that in mind, and then going into the feature, how did you feel with the feature in terms of your pace and how it would play out? Was there a particular strategy you had in mind, or was it sort of go into it with open eyes and just see what happens?
Well, the main one in mind, I knew that I was going to be starting from, you know, the back of the grid, and we knew that we had the pace, and I was looking forward to hopefully going through and being more competitive in regards to race time at the end. Like I say, I had the unfortunate incident coming through the field with the GT3 guy that really affected, you know, any kind of race strategy in regards to that. So it was a great shame. But like I say, hey, second, third, I will take it all day.
Indeed. And looking ahead to Road Atlanta in a week's time, the legendary American circuit known for its very tight and twisty corners and also an incredibly long back straight. How are you feeling for
Mhm.
Road Atlanta?
I feel really good about the track when it's empty. I'm not too sure how I'm going to feel about it when it's full of cars, including the GT3 cars, because navigating, the car successfully is key to you having a good result. And there's some very narrow corners, like you said, so it's going to be very intriguing to see, how people behave, and hopefully we can have a clean race. That's what I'm hoping for, and something entertaining at the same time.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time. We wish you the best of luck with your preparations. But until then, thank you for joining us in the interview room once again, and congratulations on 2 very well-deserved podium results at Watkins Glen.
Thank you very much.
Take care and have a lovely evening.
All right, bye.
So hearing there from Michael Price, very happy with his performances across the board, whether it be in qualifying, the sprint or the feature. And I think the really nice thing to take away from what Price was saying there, in qualifying, when he saw that delta to Stefan Vessels' overall pole time, that half a second, you know what, appreciate it, take it for what it is, and then translate it into the race. And it was the same in what was the sprint race there, where he was saying about the fact he could have potentially forced the issue in going for the move on the opening lap, but he didn't, and in the end settled for a P2. And the same in the feature, it didn't go perfectly. Of course, things did go wrong with that contact with one of the GT3s, and that saw his steering angle locked at 45 degrees. So he came into the pits, accidentally put on the tyres, but still, it resulted in a third place finish. That's good points on the board and plenty to work with going forward. And it'll be interesting to see how Michael Price gets on, much like Baz Meacham, in fact. And I think the two of them could be very good rivals as the series goes on. I think the pair of them are both in that sort of learning phase and seeing where they are and how much they can develop, and who's going to be the most who develops over the course of it. We'll have to wait and find out. But with that in mind, we now come to our final interviewee, and that is Navarro Dabova, the number 1 driver, and he is in the number 1 car, I should say, not necessarily number 1 in the championship standings. That's to be confirmed after the round, but it is the case now. We're going to be bringing Navarro Dabova in to talk about his GT3 AM experience over the course of Watkins Glen. Just give it a brief moment, and we'll bring him on in. Hello, Navarro. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Navarro, it looked as though it was a fun day out there at Watkins Glen with a 6th place in the sprint and a win in the feature. How do you feel about how it went at Watkins Glen?
It feels good to win here on Watkins Glen.
That's good to hear. And with regards to your pace over the course of tonight's racing, looking very fast in your choice of car, I have to ask, why did you pick the Ferrari, whereas your father and the rest of the Challenge have all picked the Mercedes?
First I tried the Lamborghini to drive, but I don't want to drive the Mercedes because I don't know why, but I don't want it. Then I go for the Ferrari for a test, and it feels good to drive with that. And then that is the reason why I picked the Ferrari.
Well, it definitely seems to be a choice that's working for you, although it was a difficult race in the sprint, not quite able to get into the top 5. Just take us through what happened in the sprint.
My start was not so was good, but not on my side. And in lap 3, the guy in back of me, he trying to overtake me. I was on the inside line, he on the outside. He hit the gravel. He hit my front bumper. I spent and he go in the wall.
It was unfortunate instant seeing you go into the wall and as a result drop places, but with the reverse grid in the feature race, able to use quite a strong start and move up the order. And well, with that, how do you feel how your feature race went? Because in the end you were battling for the lead with what was Galtieri all the way to the finish line.
He was first of all behind my teammate Kurt, and he can pass him. And then he was 13 seconds behind me. I drive safely, no mistakes. He come behind me. he trying to get my insight. I steering a lot further in. He hits my sides and he spins, and then I win.
Indeed, there was a little bit of contact between the two of you, which I think the stewards may be taking a look at, but we'll wait and see what happens there. But still, a fantastic drive from yourself from start to finish. And I have to ask, how are you feeling for Road Atlanta in a week's time?
It feels very good. I test a little bit yesterday, and the car feel good on that track. And I had a good lap, I guess.
Well, sounding positive for Road Atlanta. We look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time. But until then, congratulations on your results once again. And thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thank you very much.
You have a
Bye.
lovely evening. So hearing there from Navarro Dabova, who, whilst a bit of a few words at the same time, some very concise words there, and it does seem as though having a good race over the course of the evening. It was interesting to hear him talk about he didn't want to run the Mercedes at any point, and instead opted initially to look at the Lamborghini Huracan, but then settled on the Ferrari. And that Ferrari definitely has been a very valid pick, and it's been validated today in the races at Watkins Glen with that P6 and that P1. And well, looking ahead to the rounds ahead, I do think that Navarro Dabova is going to be a force to be reckoned with within the GT3 AM class, and definitely one of those major contenders as the racing goes on. Very strong driver, and I have to wait and see how things go down. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we've got time for interview-wise, and that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you very much for watching. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out, our official website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, our Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. Also, a big thank you to our partners without whom it'd not be possible to bring you Lobby 2, and that is IMB Raceway. You can check them out at their official website, imbraceway.com. But from now until next time, where next time we'll be heading to the Michelin Raceway at Road Atlanta. We stay in the United States for round number 2. The race will be happening live on Wednesday, the 13th of April 2022, but we'll be bringing you the post-race broadcast on Thursday, the 14th of April 2022. A slight change. We'll be bringing it on a Thursday rather than a Friday for next week due to a scheduling conflict, but then we'll be back to the traditional Friday slot. But do put that in your diaries. Thursday, the 14th of April, in which case we'll be seeing Lobby 2 take to the tarmac once more, and how will it all go down at the tight and twisty Raceway, with also some monstrous straights in between those twisty corners, and there's sure to be plenty of action, and multi-class at Road Atlanta is something you never want to miss. But with that, we have been Next Gen Racing. I have been your host and broadcaster, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit. And until next time, as always, ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.